Meeting for Thursday, October 12th. Would you all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I don't have many announcements this evening. First of all, the future town council meetings, which occur here on these dates, Matthew Thornton Room in this room at 7 p.m. Those dates are October 26th, November 2nd, and November 16th. The second is I have spoken with Shannon Barnes about the joint meeting, and as you may know, some of you may not know, but we take turns who's hosting the meetings, the joint meetings, and it's the school board's turn this year. So they are going to be hosting, and they'd like to request to have that joint meeting the week of November 13th. We have checked the calendar, Paul and I, and there's no planning board meeting on that Tuesday if we choose to do it. So I would like to hear from the group. What do you think about the week of November 13th, and having it either on the Monday the 13th or the Tuesday the 14th? What opinions do people have? Because then we can let her know.
When does the town celebrate Veterans Day?
10th.
Yeah. The 14th would be good for me.
Would be best. Either one is okay with me. How about the remaining? Either one?
14th is better for me.
Okay, so I will call her and tell her the 14th. And I have previously asked if the topics, and the only one that I've heard of from the group is the whole discussion about the tennis courts and the skate park. And I don't know what the school board has requested yet, so obviously we'll be getting an agenda. Okay, thank you. Okay, any announcements, Paul?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Beginning tomorrow, October 13th, Daniel Webster Highway corridor traffic, both north and southbound lanes, will be shifted over and use Daniel Webster Drive. That's the area in front of King Cone that we've been working on with the culvert. The traffic now is going to be shifted closer to Island Drive and on the side where they've been working. Want to remind everybody, the speed limit in this work zone is 25 miles an hour. Police officers will be on duty to help monitor during the lane shifts, and the lane shifts are planned to be in place for several weeks. On Friday, October 27th, from 5 to 8 p.m. at Wasserman Park, the town will be having the Merrimack's 25th annual Halloween party. This is a free event, features a variety of games, crafts, and other activities. The event is co-organized by the Parks and Rec Department and the Merrimack Police Department. For complete details, visit the Parks and Rec Department's website at www.merrimackparksandrec, that's parks with an S, and ANDREC.org. Thank you.
Okay, PFOA update. Thank you. The Department of Environmental Services held a PFOA informational meeting this past Tuesday, October 10th. I want to thank the Department of Environmental Services and Health and Human Services, and also Dr. Chan, who is the state epidemiologist, who came to be able to provide information about the recently disseminated data about the blood testing for community PFOA MVD customers. Obviously, we've been waiting for this data for a long time. When we requested it of the state, it took them a while to get to the 200. I believe they had to send out over 800 invitations to be included, and it took that many invitations to get 217 people. Now, 217 people, how many households was that?
132, I think was the number.
32. So if you were invited, the whole household was tested. So it was, if there were 4 people who lived at that address, all 4 people were tested. So they were able to get some variation, obviously, in ages, sexes, or genders, and age groups, so and also demographics. So the bottom line is there's going to be a lot of future research that's going to have to be done, but there were some highlights that were noted. One of the things that I'm glad to hear, at least at this point in time, there are no cancer clusters in Merrimack, which I'm glad to hear. It doesn't mean anything in the future, but at the present time, that to me I felt good about. Now, also, the new information is Bill Boyd obviously had previously volunteered to be a liaison with the Citizens Water Group, and Peter Albert has also volunteered to be involved. So thank you to both of you. I'll be interested to see information that you receive as a group and be able to come back and talk to us. And I think as a group we need to also let everyone know that obviously we've been waiting for this information, and this is now what we have to look at to be able to determine what we need to do, if and what we need to do. And one of the things we have to find out is legally what our role is and what options we have available, and that's what we're going to be doing relatively soon. I think a lot, not only is it MVD, which of course we have nothing to do with, but more particular with those private well people. They don't have anybody representing them. So obviously both groups, but personally I think that's a unique place we need to focus in on as well. Pete, do you want to say something? Go right ahead.
Just to add regarding that group that Bill and I, the Merrimack Citizens, Concerned Citizens for Clean Water group that we're working with, the plan is to have a member from each of our, which I guess you'd call the partners or stakeholders. And I would, we also talked about a representative from the MVD, and I see in the audience Representative Barry, and I don't look the other way, but maybe somebody from we were hoping somebody from the Merrimack state legislators, somebody might be a representative as well for the group, if you guys want to kick that around. Thank you.
So that's exactly the kind of feedback this group needs to have. Bill, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say that I really feel that the expectation that the community had regarding this meeting as it relates from two pieces, the environmental piece and the health piece. You know, what are the next steps? I still think the environmental piece, that's going to be a longer, for lack of a better word, drawn out process involved. But I think the health piece, I think we were able to get through to the state regarding the medical monitoring piece, that if the state can't step up and assist in providing financially, for lack of a better term, for them to test people, at least the state, through Health and Human Services, should be working with, as I indicated that night, medical providers, nurse practitioners, osteopathic medicines, physician's assistants, people that have access, that provide primary care to the people in our community, and giving them access to use these specific labs that have done the particular draws. I hope that the state takes that seriously, because that's, to me, is a necessary next step. It's one thing to look at the data, absorb it, but it's also indicative for us to be able to say, okay, we've got the data. What's an immediate first step that we can be doing? And I think we were able to get through to the state that the next step is having some type of medical monitoring plan in place for people to work with their primary care physicians. And they're going to, the state's going to have to interact with, the primary care physicians in this state. Maybe not up in the North Country, but definitely, south of Concord, places that have been impacted by PFOA, PFOSs in the water system. So Director Morris, I appreciated her comments. I spoke with her afterwards. I did get a phone call from a representative from the governor's office who was aware of what happened, so I expressed those particular concerns. I think they're aware that that is a logical and necessary next step. So I think the seed has been planted, and I hope it germinates very quickly up at the state level for people to have people's doctors be able to be looped in, be able to have access to do what they need to do, so that people have some information and know what they need to do from a health perspective moving forward.
Right. Okay, anything else? No. Oh, Jackie, I'm sorry.
Yes. It seems to me that the The mood the other night was a panic. I think panicky would be one word to use. I think that, and trying to put myself in their position, I certainly would be too. And this is an outside company that has been polluting our water, either with knowledge, probably not, or without trying to do the right thing. But the first thing that would bother me if I were under this gun would be a filtering system. I would want it taken care of. Let everything else fall into place as it does. But I would want my home to be filtered. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah. Okay, any others? Okay, so all those things can be, yes, Bill?
And the other observation is, for the last 18 months, we've endured about advising people that we have no control over the water, that's the MVD, and I think, I think it finally, you okay?
Yes, I know. I have to say thank you.
Okay. I thought you slipped, Counselor Flood.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
For once.
You can't raise the chairs very easily sitting on it.
I sincerely hope that our colleagues on the board, that the water commissioners heard very loud and clear the angst and the expectations that people have regarding MVD water.
I think the only thing that I would probably finalize a comment about is the biggest problem is the lack of communication. And we have been dealing with this for 3 years. And in the very beginning, we had to facilitate a lot of the communication because there was none. And I think we're at the stage now again where a lot of it, we know stuff is being negotiated. But that doesn't tell us anything. That doesn't tell us what's taking so long. And what is it that's being negotiated? Is it just 4 or 5 or the other things? And I think the quandary is how much can they say? But then acknowledge we can't say anything. I mean, this lack of anything that creates the problem. So again, having the group that you can be, part of to represent us and to communicate back to us, then that helps us. What are the options we can look at as well? Okay. Okay, Highway Garage Project update. Jackie or Finley, one of you have a report or not?
I don't. We had a brief meeting, I think, was it the 5th? Oh, we had a brief meeting on the 5th, I believe, and it was basically a continuation of going over the building appearances and so on. A contract has almost come to fruition and may have already. I didn't hear from Kyle on that yet, but they were, the project manager had a few things that they were tweaking on it, and otherwise there's not really much new. It's continuing on. We're still anticipating the beginning of the year, getting things going.
Excellent. Comments from the press or public? The rush, okay. There are no resignations, retirements, appointments, presentation of the Granite State Power Link by National Grid. And I'm sorry, you'll have to introduce yourself because I don't have your name here. The Town Council will be presented with the details of the Granite State Power Link project. Sure. Oh, sure.
Good luck.
Okay, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to pronounce it horribly. Shannon. Baxavanis.
You got it perfect.
Oh, my God. Don, would you remember that when I mess up your name later? It's the really complicated ones I don't have a problem with. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much for inviting us to speak to you this evening. My name is Shannon Baxavanis with National Grid, here to speak with you about the Granite State Power Link. I think my presentation is just taking a minute to warm up. The visuals are always helpful, I believe, with an energy project, so just give it a minute. Great, here we go. Thank you again, Madam Chair and members of the Council. I'm pleased to be here this evening. National Grid, as you may know, is both a distribution and transmission company. We're a global leader in transmission solutions. We're headquartered out of Waltham, Massachusetts, and currently maintain assets here in New Hampshire, transmission assets. We don't have distribution assets in New Hampshire any longer. National Grid has partnered with Citizens Energy to propose a clean energy project for New England. This project would deliver 1,200 megawatts of clean Canadian wind power into New England through the construction of a 59-mile new high-voltage direct current transmission line. That line would be running 59 miles from the Vermont border through the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont for 53 miles, cross the Connecticut River, and go through Littleton and Monroe for another 6 miles. At either end of this line, there would be converter stations, which are like specialized substations that convert power from AC to DC and DC to AC. When this line hits in Monroe, it would hit the converter station and it would translate into AC power, and that interconnection point would then run 109 miles of existing of upgrades to existing lines that National Grid currently owns, operates, and maintains. And that's why we're here to talk to you today, because you have a portion of that right-of-way in Merrimack. About 1.1 miles of the right-of-way cuts through the northeastern corner of Merrimack for that upgrade. So why are we proposing this project, and why did we want to come and talk to you about it today? Well, the project is sort of in a unique circumstance. The Massachusetts legislature passed legislation back in 2016 looking for opportunities to bring clean energy into New England. This would be something that Massachusetts ratepayers would be paying for the projects selected, and we are one of the projects that bid into this process. There are about 55 other competitive projects that bid in. Granite State PowerLink is a little unique in that we are reusing all existing rights of way from the Vermont border all the way down to Monroe, and then that interconnection point that goes 109 miles. Again, we're reusing existing rights of way. 106 of the 109 miles in New Hampshire, that would be an upgrade, or reconductoring is what we call it. 106 of those miles would not require any expansion of the existing right of way, which is something we're trying to do to minimize costs and minimize environmental and visual impacts. So we bid this project into this clean energy solicitation. Again, Massachusetts ratepayers will be paying for this, not New Hampshire ratepayers, not Vermont ratepayers in our instance. It goes to the state of Massachusetts. So here we go, looking at a little bit closer up slide of the impacts that I was talking about in New Hampshire. 6 miles of this new HVDC line, a converter station, and then an interconnection upgrade for 109 miles. This is just to give an idea of what the Granite State PowerLink would look like. There exists an HVDC line that runs that 59 miles that I discussed. It actually runs a heck of a lot longer than that because it goes all the way to Sandy Pond in Ayer, Massachusetts, and that's an existing HVDC line. We would build the 59 miles of the new HVDC line exactly adjacent to that line in an expanded right-of-way. You can see here basically what it would look like. Our objective is to have it look exactly like the existing line, to have a mirror image of it for the 59 miles as much as possible. So same structure type, same structure heights, etc.
Do you have a
I'm
question,
sorry,
Bill?
Counselor.
HVDC, high voltage,
Direct current.
direct current, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
That line is in Vermont?
Correct, and that line continues all the way through New Hampshire and into Massachusetts and terminates at Sandy Pond, which is a large substation in Ayer, Massachusetts. That's a National Grid substation.
So it's an HVDC line in New Hampshire as well?
Correct.
But you're going to convert to AC up in the northern part of New Hampshire and come down with AC?
Correct, but there is an existing HVDC line that still runs in that corridor. I could show you actually what that looks like. So the existing view you see here is the corridor of the area of reconductoring that National Grid would be doing as a part of this project. The two outside towers are what we'd be focused on. Those are right now 230 kV kilovolt towers. We would be upgrading them to 345 kV, and that would be done through new wires and new insulators. So for most of the project, we'd be reusing the existing structures that are out there in the right-of-way, and that middle structure is the existing HVDC line that runs all the way to Ayer, Massachusetts that I was referencing. We will not be touching that as a part of this project. That would remain. That tower is about 110 feet tall, and the two existing 230 kV lines are about 60 feet tall. Again, we intend to reuse those two outer towers, the 230 kV towers at 60 feet, and just string basically new wire and new insulators and new conductors. So for the average person, looking up at that right-of-way, what they would see today is basically what they would see when we were done doing this upgrade. It's the perceptible eye cannot see the change in the size of a wire because it's so minor. And then the insulators, which are those glass rings that hang down, those would be extended about a foot. And again, from the ground, you really can't tell the difference. But those would be the major visual changes that you would see. In some cases, we're right now estimating 1 out of every 5, so about 20% of the towers we're estimating would need to be replaced because of asset condition or clearance issues. And so we would replace them with a similar type of structure, but it would be taller. It would not exceed 80 feet tall. We don't have incentive to build taller, so if it needed to be 66 feet tall, we would build the tower to 66 feet. If it needed to be 70 feet, we'd build it to 70, but it would not exceed 80 feet. We do not have yet the details of where those replacements would occur. We're doing field work as we speak to better identify the parcels in which we would need to replace towers. So essentially, from Merrimack's perspective, we're doing this reconductoring upgrade. We may have to replace a tower or two, but likely it's just an upgrade to the voltage with new wires and new insulators. No expansion of the right-of-way. So what are the benefits to New Hampshire in putting in this new HVDC line and doing this interconnection upgrade? Of course, there's no cost to New Hampshire ratepayers, so I do want to mention that because I know that always comes up. And in fact, there should be a decrease in rates because this will bring in a significant amount of generation into the grid, which would then suppress prices across New England. And so all ratepayers should see a reduction in rates to the tune of about $34 a year is the estimation as of today. And again, that would be all ratepayers in New England. We would also have jobs that would be created through this project. We've actually signed MOUs with the IBEW 104 and 490, which are local here in New Hampshire, and our intention is to use local jobs first to build the project. So the estimations are about 1,500 construction jobs at peak construction in New Hampshire. We'd also be providing energy assistance to low-income families through our partnership with Citizens Energy. Citizens Energy is a 40-year-old company based out of Boston, and what they basically do is invest in transmission projects like this and take a portion of their proceeds out and reinvest them in communities along the route. And that would take place in New Hampshire. So we've been meeting with the New Hampshire CAP Association and CAP directors to talk to them about ways in which we could leverage existing programs to provide weatherization or home heating assistance or fuel pumps, or heat pumps or other types of low-income energy assistance throughout New Hampshire. We're also looking at job creation opportunities through local economic development partners, and in New Hampshire those discussions are very early on, but we do have a partnership in Vermont with the Northeastern Vermont Development Association, and we're looking to do something similar here in New Hampshire where basically we're offering revolving loan fund opportunities and local economic and community development grants for communities along the project route to enhance job creation and economic development. Local property tax revenues, of course, that comes with a project of this type because all of the assets are taxed along the right-of-way. So in New Hampshire, the estimation's about $590 million that would go into local property tax revenues over the 40-year lifespan of the project. We're also pleased to have a significant impact on regional greenhouse gas emissions reductions with this project. We're estimating about 15.7 million tons of carbon dioxide would be removed from the environment within the first 10 years of operation. And that's because we are bringing new Class 1 wind resources into New England.
Bill, did you have a question before she moves on?
Can we circle back to the comment about how rates are going to be lowered in the state of New Hampshire? One of the things on your slide, it's slide 3 under cost, it's open to voluntary offtake in New Hampshire and Vermont. When I think of offtake, are you telling like somebody like Eversource or another utility being able to buy into Granite State PowerLink? Is that correct?
That's correct. We're offering the opportunity for the local distribution companies, whether here in New Hampshire or Vermont, to purchase power off of the line.
So that's not going to stop that particular company from assessing X number of cents per kilowatt to absorb costs, because we're not paying for you to come through, but as soon as we tap into the line, then immediately they're going to try to absorb some of the costs as a result of that upgrade. Is that correct?
They would not be paying for the upgrade. So that would not be included in the cost, because this is not on the tariff. What you're referring to is more the tariff structure that projects like these, like a reliability project, would go through. This is not a reliability project. It's going through a commercialization opportunity in Massachusetts. It's a contract-based thing with Massachusetts. So even if a company decided to take local offtake from the line, it would not go through the payment for the construction of the line. That is entirely paid for by Massachusetts ratepayers in the long-term contracts any selected project would go into with the Massachusetts electric distribution companies.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Peter?
What's the typical complaint or concerns from other communities that you're running the line through?
So for this portion, like a Merrimack, where we're doing a reconductoring, which is a pretty standard upgrade, we haven't had too many concerns. There have been questions about whether wind farm projects could be interconnected, domestic wind farm projects could be interconnected, and I'm sure you can imagine certain areas that maybe would be asking that question. We've been asked about any changes to access, or would we be using herbicide or pesticide for clearing prior to project construction? What would the construction impacts be? Would there be impacts to roads? Those are mostly of the questions that we get for the reconductoring portion, which is very typical for a transmission project like that.
Now, do you get concerned? Obviously, you hear about the Northern Pass and everything. Are you getting concerned about people cutting down trees and all this other stuff, the environmental issues? One thing I've always wondered, and I don't know if you've considered it or any of the other people, but when I've gone other parts of the country, the utilities take these easements they go through, and they create utility roads, but they also make them bike, hiking trails. They make it for outdoor recreational areas to kind of get some use out of that land. And I've always thought that we've got a lot of lines running through this state and some beautiful country, and maybe if there's a concern that maybe you guys should offer to do that. It creates a good access road for you folks, and it creates an outdoor recreational area throughout the state for others.
Sure, and each easement is obviously different in what it says in the easements, and for this particular portion through Merrimack, where we have existing easements, I'm not sure what they say for allowing recreational use. What I do know is for the HVDC line, the new line that we'd be putting in through Vermont, that particular area of Vermont is big into hiking, biking, recreational activities, hunting, lots of sportsman activities, and that's something that we're going to honor with the construction of the new line to maintain those uses. I believe it may be different in this portion of the right-of-way in New Hampshire, so I'd have to check in on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it for where you're talking coming through Merrimack, but it's just something I've always thought would be a great way for our utilities. And so you really don't have any connection to Seabrook or anything like that, the nuclear plant?
No, we don't.
Because I'm wondering, all right, I was just curious how much power the state gets from that place.
But one of my follow-up questions is this being proposed to offset the decommissioning of Pilgrim, Plymouth, and Yankee Row?
So when Massachusetts came up with the guiding legislation for this project, well, that brought about these types of projects to compete in, that was part of the calculus, is that there is generation going offline and we're going to need to supplement that and replace it. And the push is toward clean energy to replace that. You've seen that across New England. And so that's what part of the solicitation is looking to achieve. Yes.
Where are the windmills up in Canada?
They're on the Gaspé Peninsula.
Enough said. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. Oh, Jackie?
Did you say that 1,200 megawatts was going to be coming into New England?
Correct.
What time frame would that be?
Sure. So I can actually skip forward so you can see the time frame. So right now we're obviously in the pre-permitting phase. We anticipate to start our permitting process this fall and submit our first application to the federal government for the presidential permit because we have an international border crossing. Then we would start our state siting processes in Q1 of next year. And the timeline for the Massachusetts RFP solicitation response is January of next year. But once we received all our permits, which we anticipate that to go through till about mid-2020, we would begin construction in mid-2020 and look to complete construction in fall of 2022 with an end of year 2022 in service date.
Wow.
Are the windmills already in place?
They are not. The project actually will enable the development of new wind facilities up in Canada, and they're on a little bit more of a rapid time frame than we are in terms of development and permitting and construction. So they would be ready for when our line goes into service.
And
We'll finish
how,
Jackie and then Pete.
what? Oh, okay.
Go right ahead.
I was wondering how much is 1,200 megawatts?
Um,
What kind of an area does that?
I don't know if I
the-
could do a calculation for you, but I could get back to you with a number.
I thought in general. Oh,
It's
I think we have an answer in the audience.
Is there?
It'll take care of all of New Hampshire. If it were the only thing.
If it were the only, wow, that's a lot. And just one last thing. Does, this is probably a stupid question, but how, does energy generated by wind travel in the same quantity and quality as, say, a fossil fuel generated energy?
So wind has about a 40% capacity rating. So 40% of the line, 40% of the time the wind blows essentially. And so we would need to have backfill in the line. And we would be looking to have hydro as the likely backfill for
Okay.
the line. And we're actually, our model is a little unique on that because we have decided to take a calculated risk in putting in our bid into the Massachusetts RFP process, in that we are going to go after short-term economic sales of hydro during winter months and times when the wind is not blowing. And we're doing that at the risk of National Grid with no cost to customers because we believe we can get lower pricing for hydro for that purpose.
Very good.
Just
Yeah.
one question, I think you touched upon it. So if a community that's along this route decides, geez, we're looking for an alternative form of electrical energy and we've got some space, would your company entertain some wind-powered towers or whatever in that community to help them defer some of their electric?
So what you're getting to is an interconnection with a domestic facility tapping into the line. That can occur today on the existing right-of-way that we're looking to upgrade, and that could occur after this project is up, gets the required upgrade for the AC portion, the alternating current portion. That's not something National Grid decides, though.
Yeah.
That goes to ISO New England and has to go into their regional study, and ultimately they make the decision for that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, continue.
So I did go over the major milestones and time frame that we're on. Outreach and engagement is a critical piece, obviously, for a project of this type, and it is really central to National Grid's development philosophy. And we've been doing this since we launched the project in March of this year, and have been able to garner significant support in both New Hampshire and Vermont for the project from legislators, from third-party groups, from residences, and we anticipate that that will continue to grow as we advance the project. We've had 100% contact with all landowners and are proceeding to conduct environmental survey work up in the Vermont portion, and have begun some of that in the New Hampshire portion as well. And that will continue through the springtime, basically. But we want to come back out here if we need to at any time that it's required, and above and beyond, to make sure that residents and legislators and town council members know what we're doing before we do it, and you have a venue to ask questions. So we hope that this is the first of many conversations that we have with you as we progress the project. We are in a competitive solicitation, so I'd be remiss in not mentioning why Granite State PowerLink is the best project, not only for New Hampshire, but the region. We are competing against, I think, about 5 other major transmission projects like ours. Ours is lowest cost. We're at $1.1 billion. That's about $500 million less than the closest project to us. Minimal environmental impacts. We're reusing existing rights of way and reusing as much existing infrastructure as possible to minimize environmental impact. We're an experienced team. National Grid actually built the original HVDC line that's in the right-of-way today. We're actually one of the only that are bidding into this that have built an HVDC line. And we've built some across the globe as well. The real environmental benefit that's being brought to New England with Class 1 wind generation from Canada has enormous environmental benefits, as I mentioned, to carbon emissions throughout the region, and really gets to the point of transitioning into a clean energy economy. Also, the growing in local and regional support that I mentioned. This is something that we hope to earn as we advance the project, and we believe that the project has a number of merits locally and regionally. So this does set us apart from a lot of other competitors. So, of course, I'm here today to not only ask for your support, but also to ask what else can we be doing so that Merrimack is aware of the project, engaged in the project, and has a venue to ask questions of the team as we move forward. And these are the ways in which we can be contacted, but we hope that we can answer any questions today, but look forward to continuing the dialogue.
Thank you. Bill?
Yeah, just a follow-up comment. I'm kind of sort of flabbergasted that you're hedging with hydro in the winter months, because that St. Lawrence Riverway really whips up a storm from Gaspé through Rimouski down to Quebec City. I mean, vicious winds that come down through there. So I'm was kind of surprised that you said that you were hedging that. I mean, summer months, I could probably say, okay, summer months makes sense, but in the wintertime, it's brutal up there with the wind. So.
Yeah, and they've done, obviously, I'm not an energy modeler,
No,
but they have done some modeling, and they believe that the winter time they would be able to get some good pricing, and so there's a specific kind of methodology that they've used, and by bidding 100% wind into the Massachusetts RFP, we think really meets the intent of what the Massachusetts legislature was trying to accomplish, and ultimately achieves the goals of what New England is ultimately trying to accomplish with clean energy. So, but we're cognizant of the fact that the wind doesn't always blow. So.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for
Madam
coming
Chair.
and presenting us with the information.
Thank you, councilors.
Appreciate it. Thank you. We'll give you a minute. I'm going to screw it up. I know. They did good. Okay. Next on the appointments, annual review with the Town Center Committee, submitted by Town Center Committee Chair Nelson Disco. Per town, per town of Merrimack Charter, Section 6-6, at least annually, this should be an annual review with the Town Center Committee. This agenda item is to highlight the committee's significant actions, current projects, anticipated actions, and to raise any concerns the council should know or could act on. And as I just mentioned, I had mentioned to you, Nelson, before, I just wanted to thank you for the very thorough and very concise summary you already presented us, which sort of puts me in the frame if I had any questions, I was prepared for it, so go right ahead.
Okay, well, thank you, Nancy, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for entertaining us this evening. This is our annual report from the Town Center Committee. And the Town Center Committee was established in 2009, basically to implement the recommendations, to help implement the recommendations of the ITRAC study that was done in the town center area. The ITRAC study recommended certain building of certain sidewalks and making the town more connected in this center portion. And we have a map and plans for that, and I'll talk about it in a minute. But the purpose was to coordinate development and make it a walkable center for residents and for businesses in the town center, help people patronize those businesses. The current membership of the committee consists of myself as chairman. Peter Flood is our vice chairman. Jackie is our secretary. And Bill Wilkes, Karen Freed, Mary Hendricks, Matt Chevenel, and Bill Cummings are representatives from the departments in the town that were recommended in the ITRAC study. And we also have Finley Rothaus as our town council representative to our committee. The committee's main thrust in the past year has been working and encouraging what we call the Souhegan River Trail. And this trail, as you know, was funded by a special grant through the Department of Transportation using federal money in the amount of, and in conjunction with town money that was slotted to replace a section of sidewalk that was actually a safety hazard. And so we've made a town contribution to that, and we've got the state or federal government putting up the balance. We're about $500,000 a project. The trail, as you may recall, runs runs from Watson Park to the Merrill's Marauders Bridge on the Souhegan River, over the Souhegan River on the Turnpike. And there's a footbridge there, and then it connects from there to trails that go all the way up to Wildcat Falls. There was a public hearing held for local concerns on January of 2017. Our consultant, together with representatives of the state, came and took public testimony. The testimony was to look at, the purpose of the hearing was to look at alternative routes to the route that was planned and the route that's suggested in the ITRAC study. The route that's suggested in the ITRAC study is one that goes under Route 3, connects from Watson Park through the old sluiceway that fed the mill that used to be there, and then connects on up along the river from there. There was concern, there was the townspeople, and all of the committee and committees that have looked at it, including our fire and our public works departments, have favored that route, as opposed to a route that would have people crossing Route 3, walking across in front of the fire station, and then on up the Souhegan River. So, but despite the testimony of the public made, there's a requirement for an historic resources review. And it was determined after the public hearing that there should be a professional review done on the value of certain concrete chambers and some remaining gate works that are still in place there, even after the dam was removed. And so they want an historic resources study of that, and they're now out soliciting an archaeologist, approved archaeologist, to evaluate these structures and make sure we're not destroying anything valuable. The rerouting the trail is not a good idea. So anyway, there are more public hearings to come, and those are not yet scheduled. And so we the committee continue to lobby for this with the people working on it, and hopefully we'll get some results this year. The only other thing having to do with the Sauhegan River Trail this year I wanted to mention to you was that there was a sign installed on the footbridge over the Sauhegan River that identifies the Merrill's Marauders bridge itself, which is on the Effie Everett Turnpike, and points out to certain significant accomplishments by Mr. Merrill while he was in the Army and so on. And that had been damaged by graffiti, and the town Public Works Department went and was able to remove all that graffiti. I hate to say that publicly. It's a challenge to somebody to go out and do it again, but anyway, it came out very nice, and I want you to know right now it's in good shape. The next big grant project that we have in the town is for the Woodbury Street sidewalk and an extension north of the library to as far as Wire Road. And that's another grant that was received early at the end of last year, very end of last year, and is ongoing now. At the state that it's in right now, we've got the paperwork is at DOT to proceed with hiring a consultant, an engineering consultant, to manage the project. And so that's where that is. The other good thing about that is, in conjunction with that, is the Wire Road Route 3 intersection improvements, which is something that's been in our long-range capital plan for some time, has now been added this year in the NRPC 10-year plan. So that's a very good thing to have it in the 10-year plan. And although it's scheduled for 2023, our Public Works is confident that some projects may drop out, which will give us a bump up. So it may come sooner than that. And then, of course, it ties in with the Route 3 bridge over the Babusick Brook, which is hopefully in that same time frame.
Right.
So those pieces all have to come together at the same time. The other thing, we were able to prevail upon the Rotary Club through Peter, who is an active member of the Rotary, and Bill Wilkes is also a member of the Rotary, and they have started to build a connecting sidewalk between Route 3 and the Abbey Griffin Park. And you can see it out there now. It's under construction. I want to point out that this has been volunteer work provided by O'Keefe Landscaping, with Sean O'Keefe, and All Outdoors Landscaping, Rob Lavoie, and Gleason Isone Stone, Ward Gleason. So I just wanted to give them a little plug. They're doing this voluntarily for the town. And again, Peter Flood has been active in coordinating that and getting that approved by the Rotary, and of course yourselves approved the grant. It was begun on September, at the end of September, and it's probably not going to finish until spring. One of the things we're talking about doing is maybe having some sort of a little ceremony in the spring when it's open. And
What's going to take so long? They've already got the granite there, right?
the granite's there.
Do you have to put the soil or something?
I
there?
think they just need to smooth it out and get the grass to grow. It's pretty much there.
Well,
Yeah.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
is there something
Yeah,
I'm
no,
missing?
there's not.
Okay.
not a lot
I didn't know if
more.
there was a lot more
Yeah.
that they were going to do.
Yeah, they moved pretty fast.
They
when
did?
heard I was going to come and talk to you, so. Yeah, okay. The connection, yeah, the next things we've been working on mostly is public outreach. We made a new handout, which I've given each of you a copy, or did you want me to? Yeah.
Jackie,
I'm sorry,
before-
Peter.
I don't want Nelson to go on, because there's some things that came up already, and I don't know if we should wait, some questions regarding.
It's your meeting, ladies and gentlemen, Madam Chairman, whichever you'd like.
Should you want me to wait to the end, or?
I'm sorry. I was shocking. Repeat that. I'm sorry.
I have some questions
Yes.
regarding what I've heard already about the sluice way and sidewalks that I'd like to just ask Nelson about.
I would prefer, could we wait to the end?
Okay.
Would that be okay with you?
Yep, sure.
Is that all right?
Your
Okay.
meeting.
So keep,
Okay.
just keep track, and we'll make sure we do it all together. Thank you,
Okay, it
Pete.
doesn't take off it doesn't add to my time, right? My time limit. I was
It
given
goes
the
into your
limit.
time, so keep moving.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
the,
Listen to who's saying that.
I wanted to talk a little bit, I would call your attention to the new trail map, new town center map, which we made. What we did was we took the town center map that you may remember, the big one that was approved by the ITRAC committee, and we cleaned it up a little bit, took some of the detail out of it, shrunk it down and made a little handout. And we've been giving these out at various places around town to try and inform the public of what we're doing and trying to keep the public interest up in what we're doing. We've run information booths this year at the Pancake Breakfast on the 4th of July. We had one at the Farmers Market, and we were going to do one at the Merrimack Expo, and that went away. We've talked about possibly doing another one this year, and but we haven't had a meeting on that to discuss it yet. And at these public sessions, we get a lot of interested people. It's not a large percentage of the population of the town, I must say, but those who come by and ask about it are really interested, and we get I'd say virtually no negative comments on what we're trying to do here. And so it's a popular thing with the public. They just have other things on their mind. We also made a presentation of what we're doing with the ITRAC and what we've done with this ITRAC plan, I should say, for public TV. And that's been played dozens of times since it was done. We did it with using the community resources here. They filmed a little thing, and we talk about the plan, what we're trying to do, and we show the map. So that's been our public outreach this year. With regard to the school participation, the school district, they did some repaving on O'Gara Drive in front of a high school this year. And they've got in their CIP now for 20 and 21 to include a sidewalk on O'Gara Drive. And there's a gap in O'Gara Drive between Route 3 and it comes about halfway up O'Gara Drive, this present sidewalk. We'd like to continue that. It's a little bit contingent upon what all is going to happen with that whole corner
Area.
of the area there. So it may not happen in 2021 as forecasted, but we're going to keep it in the plan, and hopefully we can get that accomplished one of these days. The JMU's school students participated in Walk to School Day. This is a national holiday, or National Walk to School Day on October 4th. And we participated to a limited.
I was going to say, how many participants did you have?
I didn't count, but what they do, they had bussed a number of students into the high school and let them walk up to the JMU school from the high school. But
All right.
it's
For
calling
symbolism, that's
attention
right.
to the notion of healthy living and walking to school and or biking for that matter. And so those are things that are ongoing, and we encourage and try and get people interested to do. Our plans for next year, we want to continue to work these TAP grants. The hearing dates will be coming up, and we'll be giving input on those. We want to continue our public outreach using the Chamber of Commerce. We work closely with them, with the EdCAC, and with more information booths here and there around town. And bringing complete streets awareness to Merrimack. And we're going to be coordinating our efforts with the NRDC, who is working now on a Route 3 bike pedestrian map and plan for all of Route 3. As you know, as you have approved, this is something that we've started now, and it'll be interfacing. We have a small little piece in the middle of their study, but we'll be working with them on that as it affects our part of the town. And we're planning to do more Merrimack TV presentations. We have done some filming on the construction of the sidewalk in the Abbey Griffin Park, and that will be included in it, and we'll make that public and make it part of the Merrimack TV repertoire. So our recommendations to the town council is to add the town center implementation into capital reserve plan. I think it would. I think we're going to run out of patience with these government grants, and there's some patches of sidewalk here and there that we really need to consider funding at some point. And I would ask that the council put it in there, and you can put it in, and even if it's out in a few years, or somewhere where it fits, that we can do something to finish this whole project. It was 2009, and we're going into 2018, so we've been at it a while. It's coming slowly, but it's coming. We'd like to continue to continue your support to us through the town manager and through the Department of Public Works. They've been very supportive, both. And of course, recruiting for a full committee. We still have some openings on the committee.
How many?
There's really only one or two, I believe, at the most. And but you know, most of these people have been on it for the 8 years, so you get a little nervous. And then there's some suggestions for further information in my handout to you, which you can take at your leisure if you would like to learn more about building sidewalks.
Excellent.
So, may I answer your questions now?
Okay, Pete.
First off, Nelson, thanks for being part of this committee, and for as long as I've been in town, 27 years, you've always been a part of the community volunteering, so thanks for that.
Okay, thank you.
A couple of things, the historic resources survey, when do they want to do that?
I believe it's starting already.
Okay.
Well, no, excuse me. They have to hire, they're in the process of hiring a
Archaeologist.
certified archaeologist. Okay, it has to be, can't be just anybody to do it. I mean, I could do it, but they want it. So they're in the process right now of hiring the archaeologist. It was, it should be a fairly short time, but they want to come and look at these structures that are here and see if they have some historic value that should be preserved or in some way cared for.
And that was my next question was, I mean, how long do we look at for that project? But
Well, I'd be looking at a few months to do that, Peter, but I'm always optimistic about these things.
you and me both.
Yes.
The other thing I see is the TAP grant for Woodbury Street, and I'm looking at it and I see it, and I'm kind of thinking that there are other areas in town that we could really use sidewalks on other than Woodbury Street. And I'm wondering if, I mean, right comes to mind is right where the DW Diner ends and goes all the way to Columbia Circle. There's a stretch there that definitely needs some sidewalks. So there's some pieces there already, but I mean, could we use the funds? They can't do that. Can't go there. Okay.
I've got to say, Peter, I agree with you 100%. there are other places that need sidewalks badly in this town, and I would hope that the town council can recognize that at some point and put it in our capital planning.
I guess,
But let me say this, we're restricted, this committee is restricted to work in the town center, which is defined as that space between Fraser Square and the drugstore up there and Front Street. That's the extent, and also everything to the turnpike and down to the river. But, so that sort of limits us from going outside and looking at others. The priorities for Woodbury Street were set in the original document. And one of the reasons that Woodbury Street got such a high priority was the fact that large numbers of school children, they're high school kids, walk from the high school down to the town center every day that there's school. And I have photographs, I didn't bring them, of kids walking in the road. They walk in the road because there's no wisdom.
oh, yeah.
Also, at the same time, those who are fortunate enough to have automobiles also come down that same way. So it's a congested area, a lot of traffic, and a lot of people walking. And so that's how it got such a high priority. The highest priority really was the crossing of Babusick Brook, which is a little bit out of our financial means, out of the means of, getting these little grants. But that's the reason we are where we are.
Thank you.
Okay.
Jackie?
Oh, yes, I just wanted to tell you, because you probably didn't know, Bill Cummings has done a marvelous job with Bill Wilkes and Peter. Bill Cummings, working on the Abbey Griffin Park.
On the Abbey Griffin?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, he took the films, he did the filming of it, yeah. Which will be, yeah.
Bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair Nelson. Again, to echo Councilor Harold, thank you so much for all the years you've put in to the community. I appreciate it. The one question, your recommendation, add town center implementation into capital reserve plan. Do you have an idea of how much the council should be considering for feeder money to consider a line item in the capital reserve?
No, I don't right offhand. It was something that'd have to be researched, it's something we'd have to go through Public Works and get them. Some of these pieces would be very low cost because the terrain is right. In some places would take a little bit more money because of the terrain and the drainage. It has to work with both. So I would say that what we should do is look at our priorities and ask the Public Works Department to estimate those for capital purposes.
Okay.
Apparently
Or-
Paul wants to say something about that.
Yeah.
They're already there. DPW has been looking at that and actually going to bring that forward when we bring the capital reserve plan forward.
There you go.
Ooh, does that make you happy?
Oh, there. Thank you, Paul.
He's going to leave with a smile on his face.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Back there.
Tom,
Okay.
did you have a question as well?
Yeah, thanks, Nelson. A couple of things. You mentioned O'Gara Drive sidewalk gap between Route 3 and the high school. Did you mean Babusick Lake Road and the high school for O'Gara Drive?
No, I meant Babusick Lake Road.
Okay,
I'm
thanks.
sorry, I misspoke there.
Not a problem. In the plans for next year, you're talking about a coordinated effort with NRDC, and you even mentioned NRDC when you were talking.
And I meant NRPC, didn't
Okay.
I?
Just trying to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just one other general question, these TAP grants, I guess I had gotten the impression that there were a lot of strings attached to those that were starting to get extremely expensive, and we were actually contemplating passing over on those. Is that not the case
There
that the
was
Town
something
Center
about
Committee is looking at?
environmental. There was an environmental issue, wasn't there?
Not that you're aware of, huh?
We're not planning to pass over anything, no.
Well, I mean, I thought
Yeah.
they came back and told us it was going to actually cost more like $1 million or something to build that
Right.
trail because it had to be 6 feet wide and ADA compliant and all that kind of stuff.
Correct.
But
No
not-
one's
not to
told
your
me
knowledge.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would like to have that clarified.
Maybe Paul knows.
Kyle's here if you'd like him to come up and speak to that a little bit.
Might as well, Kyle. Let's get this
You
straightened
have
out.
something to say.
Because I had the same, that was on my list of questions too, having to do with environmental considerations and ADA.
Isn't
Okay.
this guy doing a great job? He's a
And that-
terrific
He
advocate
was
for
up till
the,
now.
for the pedestrians in town.
He got some good news, and he might be getting some bad news now. Go ahead.
So I guess I can answer the last couple questions. Regarding the CIP we submitted last year, and this year's CIP, when we submit it, will be similar, had the two previous TAP grants in there,
Right.
as well as proposed TAP grants for the next two cycles. It's a biennial cycle for the TAP grants.
Okay.
And we've selected projects from the town center plan for the next two cycles as well. So that's where the sidewalk projects that we have in the CIP are tied to the town center plan through the TAP program.
Hold on.
Kyle, just, what's basically a TAP grant? I'm not sure what that
So
means.
TAP stands for Transportation Alternatives Program.
Okay.
It's a pool of federal money. What they did back in 2014, they created the TAP program out of many smaller programs. You may have heard of the CMAQ program, Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality, the Safe Routes to School, Transportation Enhancement Program. They combine them all into the TAP program to give the DOT more flexibility in projects.
And they cut a lot of the money out.
Yes. So getting back to the first TAP grant, which we received the award in 2014, and it is going excruciatingly slow. We're still in the feasibility study, and that ties into the question about the historic study that we're being required to do by New Hampshire Division of Historical Resources. Where we are in that process is we have a contract amendment approved by DOT. They just approved that last week. Now they need to get the feds to sign off and commit the money to the state so the state can commit it to us so we can engage our chosen historian to perform the study. So that's where we're at. Once we've completed that hurdle, and it includes both a historic study of the dam site and the archaeological items that Nelson referred to, that should allow us to complete the feasibility study. At that point, the end of the feasibility study will conclude with our consultant recommending a preferred alternative for the project based on the public hearings that we had and all the input and all the design options that they've gone through. At that point, we'll know what the approximate cost of the project is. If we're required to build it to the standards that the feds seem to want to require, you're correct, it's probably out of our budget. And we would advocate for shortening the project to get it from Watson Park to the fire station, through the sluiceway, and then to the other side to the forest. That we believe we could afford with the $535,000 we have.
So you'd modify the plan.
That's our plan to request. Should that not happen, and should the state say you applied for this length of project, it's all or nothing, then I think you folks will have a decision to make whether to take the study that we have. The state will still pay 80% of everything up to date, and then we can decide to do whatever part of the project we want with our own funds, or we can continue on, use the 80% of the 535 and supplement the rest with town funds.
Okay. So we have a while before we have
We
to get
do.
to that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, yeah.
Kyle, again, if we didn't go with the federal grant, we still
Uh,
have to do the.
You need to put your
Oh,
microphone.
sorry. If we didn't go with the federal grant, we'd still have to do the historical survey and all those other hurdles?
Not if we did the grant.
It depends on the project.
But
If-
just to go under the
We
highway.
may have had to anyway, because we'll need a shoreline permit and a wetland permit. The wetland permit automatically triggers DHR review. That was something that was added to the wetland permits probably 7, 8 years ago. So that automatically triggers the DHR review. Once you get into federal money, then you get into what's called the NEPA process, which is the National Environmental Protection Act. And there's a whole additional set of requirements that we have to go through.
Thanks.
Amazing. Anybody else?
Division of Historic Resources, New Hampshire. It's the state historian.
One quick question. This is a really useful. Is this on our town website anywhere?
Yes, but what's on the town website is the original from which that was made, which, the map. You're talking about the map itself?
Yeah,
Or the whole,
the whole thing.
the whole
There is a
brochure?
link to the town center plan process through the community development department pages.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you.
Excellent,
Okay.
thank you. That was my, boy, you got a lot of backup here
I got
tonight.
a lot of help today, and I needed it too.
Okay,
That's
any
good.
other questions? Seeing none, okay, thank you very much, Nelson, and
Okay.
thank you for
Nelson
your
Cobb,
time.
thank you.
Okay.
And all your skills and experience.
Okay, well, look forward to seeing us find some other ways to fund these projects. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nelson.
Thanks, Nelson.
Okay, as part of our reviewing of the town code, as you know, we've set up a schedule to do a whole bunch of chapters. And we are at the point now where a lot of the chapters that had first reading last meeting is in public hearing tonight. So I'm going to have to do each chapter individually from what I've heard. So try to bear with me. I'm going to identify the chapter, open the hearing, then close the hearing. If there's any change, actually, clarification, do I do it to the council before or after the open and close?
You can do open, close,
And then do the
town
deliberation. by the-
Deliberation with
okay.
the council, just like a regular
Okay,
public
sound
hearing.
reasonable? Okay. So let's start with Chapter 11, which is the clerk and tax collector. I'd like to open this at 8:11. Open the hearing. And look at the crowd that comes up. Okay, I'm going to close this hearing at 8:12. Okay, is there any deliberation by the council? Could I have a motion to move to the last,
Move to a,
to the consent agenda?
yeah. So move to the consent agenda, Chapter 11.
Excellent.
Second.
Okay, Bill Boyd, second by Peter Albert. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 700. Perfect. Chapter 79, wastewater treatment. Deficits, payment of. I'd like to open this at 8. This is taking under a minute. 8:13. No? I know, I have to slow down. Okay, I'm going to close at 8:14. Is there any questions by the council?
Madam Chair, move Chapter 79 to the consent agenda.
Motion made by Bill Boyd, second by
Second.
Dan Dwyer. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 700. Chapter 139, which is the registration of motor vehicles. Open at 8:15. And the rush of the crowd. Yes.
Curiosity question. How many POWs do we have in town? Will you know?
Well, you need to be able
How many POWs plates do we have in town? Just a quick curiosity question.
to,
God bless
POW,
them.
which is what?
Prisoner of war?
Oh, I thought there was, I mean, that was so obvious. I thought it had to be something else. Diane's not here, so we don't, do we have any idea? Yeah.
I'll find that out.
Just a-
I'm curious, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's pretty significant for somebody, but thank you.
Okay, let's close the public hearing at 8:16. Any deliberation?
Madam Chair, move Chapter 139 to the consent agenda.
Motion made by Bill Boyd, second by
Second.
Peter Albert. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. 700. Chapter 158, Sewer Use Ordinance. I will open the public hearing at 8:17. We're moving right along. And no comments from the public, so I close at 8:18.
We're already in the future.
No, what do I say? 18?
8:13,
Do I say 8?
37.
Just repeat
Eight.
some of those minutes.
Okay, I'll go 8:18.
I actually have a quick question on this, Madam Chair.
Well, then, go for it.
For either Dawn or Kyle.
It might be Jim? Jim's here for the sewer.
Yes,
What- that's
sewer
fine,
use
Jim,
would be
that's
Jim
fine.
Taylor, or
It's a simple question.
hopefully it's a simple answer.
I hope
right?
so, too. On page 28 and 29, regarding sewer screening levels, you've got a listing of compounds that are listed here.
Okay.
Do we need to concern ourselves with C6, C8, PFCs, or any Gen X chemicals as a part of this document?
Not at this time. We're still in the evaluation process in looking into this in terms of analytical testing and methodologies. Currently, there's no testing as far as the pretreatment, industrial pretreatment program, and a test would have to be incorporated into federal regulations for the town to be able to then enforce standards or limits on that.
And once that comes down, you would come back to the town council saying, I need X number of dollars to administer this particular test because of...
And we would have to come back and modify this sewer use
The
ordinance,
sewer
which
use,
would need
okay.
your approval.
Okay, good. That's all I had.
All right,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
thank you.
Have we caught up to the future? Any other questions?
No,
Seeing none.
Madam Chair, move Chapter 158 to the consent agenda.
Motion made by Bill Boyd, seconded by Dan Dwyer. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, 700. Chapter 178, Taxation. Open the public hearing. I am going to say 8:18 again. Okay, any, no discussion, no public input? Okay, I would like to close it at 8:19. Discussion?
Madam Chair, move Chapter 178 to the consent agenda.
Motion made by Bill Boyd, second by
Second.
Peter Albert. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, 700. You are opposed, okay. So it's 610. Tom Koenig in opposition. Okay, Chapter 1, which is the new okay, now that takes care of the public hearing item number 1. We're going to move up to number 2, which is Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is the newly devised introduction to the code. I'll open this public hearing at 8:20. Seeing none, close at 8:21. You have a big question mark over your head, Jackie. Am I-
I'm just thinking it isn't quite 8:20.
We're in the future.
We've been doing that for a little while now.
That's the extent of my
We're moving to the
question.
future. Okay. Okay, I'd like to take a motion.
Madam Chair, move Chapter 1 to the consent agenda.
Light, Mike is not on, Bill?
Madam Chair, move Chapter 1 to the consent agenda.
Thank you. Motion
My
made by
voice will
Bill
be loud
Boyd,
enough.
seconded by Peter
a
Albert.
shock.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, 700. Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Okay, legislative updates from state reps. Did our representative leave?
Yeah, he
Oh,
did.
Mr. Impatient. We moved pretty fast. He was probably thinking that was going to take a long time. We were moving pretty fast. I mean, look at all the future he could have.
The gentleman downstairs sitting on a bench. I'm not sure who you represent.
Is he getting,
Wearing- Was he wearing a red tie?
Yeah, the guy can find his
why don't you go, Paul?
I'll,
We'll have Paul go check. Of course, then he's got the town manager's report to do, too. Well, I was just going to wait, Paul. I wasn't going to. Oh, there he is. Were your ears ringing? We were talking about you. Legislative updates. We're assuming that's why you're here. Would that be a correct assumption?
Sometimes you guys amaze even me.
You need to push the button. We're amazing? Yeah, thank you.
No, I didn't say that. Sometimes you amaze even me. I have 5 items. I'll be brief with them.
Okay.
3 informative. 2 I would like your input. Number 1, Budweiser. Yeah, there you
Say
go.
it. I didn't hear you. I'm
Number
sorry.
1 is Budweiser.
Oh, so it was what I thought.
Saturday at noon, the Democrats
Yes.
and the Republicans, you get to go cheer or jeer your favorite opponent. That'll happen Sunday, Budweiser at noon.
Is it Saturday or Sunday? Saturday.
Please?
Yeah.
I didn't hear what you said.
What position do you play, Representative Barry?
All of them.
What are we playing? Beer drinking? Beer drink?
What
What are you doing there?
It's volleyball. It's-
Volleyball.
No, I'm sorry. It's softball.
Softball.
And it's it's
One more
Saturday.
time, can you-
Saturday, right?
Saturday.
At Budweiser at noontime.
Noontime.
And it's between
The Republican House
and the Democrats.
Democratic House.
That's worth the money.
And
And it's for the purpose of
Well,
fundraising.
Having
the second
It's a fundraiser.
informative thing
Is
is the speaker may resign.
Right, he might get a new
You've
job.
seen that, and if he does, then we've got to pick a new speaker. So maybe we'll play for that as to who.
I get your high stakes.
We'll choose
That would make it
whoever
much more
wins may get to pick the
passionate game.
speaker. Yeah. No, that won't happen, but, please?
Maybe whoever loses.
You know, you're probably not far, you're probably not far off. That there's a Chinese epithet that says, "May you live in interesting times." Let me tell you what goes on there. Well, a couple of you know from. Have you ever seen a speaker leave in mid-course? I think one died. But and do you know that you don't have to be a legislator to be the speaker? You don't have to be a member of the House of Reps.
No, didn't know that. That's true.
That opens up a whole new ball, a whole new game there.
But the game is a fundraiser, right, for a veterans group,
Yes.
which is what I wanted to make sure to say.
Good, good.
Couple of bills I'd like to, number one, the one that Chris Christensen committee passed and my committee passed and the House, this is on the PFOAs,
Okay.
on the St. Gobain thing. We passed it, the House passed, and then it went to the Senate, and they modified it to the point where it was unworkable,
That
so
was before,
it died.
right.
So what we've done is worked with House Finance, who retained another bill, and we found one that was appropriate to attach this to. There's a minor modification to it, but it will have funding for it. That should get voted on next week in the House. If it does go through the full Finance Committee, then it will come to the full House probably in January, then it gets turned over to the Senate. So the funding, the additional funding isn't there yet, but DES has, we've spoken to them. They have enough to do what you guys are asking for. This is additional.
Okay, but does this have to do with the air emissions, ability for
it's
DES to do air emission analysis?
Specific, yeah.
Perfect. Which is, you are already working on it, I have since learned.
Yeah,
But we had also written a letter related to that as well, so that's
Yep.
great.
So that gets us to the back end of it. This one I'm looking for input from you folks. May or may not have any input. Broadband access. My committee retained a bill because there were communities around the state who said they're not getting fully served. When Verizon sold their broadband to Fairpoint, and now it's been sold to Consolidated Communications, the requirement of the sale was that they reach 95% broadband service throughout the state. Well, they've done more than that depending on how you define broadband. If you do it as over the telephone with what we call twisted pair and 5 kilobyte up and down, then it's there. But we have towns that say that's not service, that's unserved. So they would like the ability to bond a competing service with their existing provider to give service to the they have the authority to do that with the unserved areas now. I mean, completely unserved. But they want to expand that authority and cover unserved.
Underserved.
Underserved, thank you. So my question to you folks is, have you had complaints about underserved areas for broadband?
I guess I don't think I think everywhere in Merrimack gets, you get internet access. And that's what you're referring to, right?
If you get cable.
Excuse me?
If you get cable.
But I have had people that have said, geez, why don't we have an alternative? Is there another, some competition here as opposed to a second carrier, if you want to call it that, in the community? I've had several people come up to me and ask that.
But that has nothing to do with the state, though.
Well, there's a combination of things going on.
Okay.
The reason you have this facility and the ability for the 3 town channels is because the town made a commitment that the carrier would be your prime carrier.
Correct.
So you still have Fairpoint, you have Comcast, and you also have satellite. Okay, so you have those, and satellite can give you internet coverage, except the delay. The delay will not work. If you've got a business and you're trying to do real life face-to-face or something, it's not fast enough for it. The delay is too long for the thing. So I was looking for input from you folks if you've had complaints about it, because I'm about to make a decision on it. I'm sorry, my committee.
I haven't received any complaints, but anytime you can open up competition in any community as it relates to internet access, I'm all for. I think people, we just talked about cable, but I think people would love to have a variety of access to the internet because everything's going to Hulu, Amazon, Netflix, YouTube. You can just click on the internet, pull it up. I can't even think of the other. It's another engine online where you can watch programming. Regardless, people can go online and watch. I think that's the trend. So I think the ability to have additional providers come into our community.
That's not what I'm trying to get.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think
what they want is the towns would like to set up their own internet service for underserved areas, and they think that underserved is less than 10 meg. Pretty soon it's going to be 100 meg because you can get 100 meg on cable, on glass and fiber. You can get 5 kilobit up on twisted pair, which is a telephone, and that's all over the place. But the issue now becomes the definition of unserved versus underserved, and whether the municipality can have the bonding capability to cover underserved areas.
And I would say yes. I would have no problem with that.
But the question was, do we have complaints? I've not received a single complaint, but I think you will find that's because there are much fewer people who have been using Fairpoint, Verizon before that, and whatever it is today. I don't know what the percentage is in town. I'd be interested to know, but I think it's a very low number compared to Comcast. big complaint. The only complaint I ever get is a cost of Comcast for my internet access. But I've not heard from a customer of Fairpoint who's ever told me they're not able to get it where they live, so I
mean,
can't
you've
offer
got-
you.
You can get it. It isn't always the best. They've had several problems, but nobody's really complained about it. Fairpoint's been trying to work on getting the system up and running. They've been doing a media blitz here in Merrimack, trying to get people on 10 meg or higher. It all depends on house miles, what they call house miles, from a routing point in town. There's the main switch here, but there's also switches throughout the community, and it depends how many feet you are from there, depending on how you can get service. And the only reason I know this is because I am a Fairpoint internet customer, and I had a fight with them to get my 10 meg, and it's a bonded pair. So they are trying, but it's sporadic throughout town, depending on where you live.
See, I remember a conversation we had not many years ago. I don't know why I never shut up. Anyway, I remember a conversation we had, I don't know if it was selectmen or council, anyway. And part of the problem is getting competition is no one wants to come in and have to invest the money that they would need to invest. It has nothing to do with it being a monopoly.
No.
We do have an agreement, but it doesn't preclude someone coming in. But it would create, they'd have to invest a lot of money to be able to establish it. So that's the issue,
Well, there's another issue, let me address
or an issue, maybe there's more.
Councilor Boyd's issue or comment. That there's an issue of the taxing authority being in competition with the entity it taxes. Because you tax the local cable guys one way or the other, their facilities, whatever's going on. And if you now become in competition with them, I'm concerned about that. So if there's no service, I have no problem with it. But when it's underserved and someone hasn't yet defined what that underserved is, whether it's 10 meg or 5 meg, up or down, depending how you want to go at it. So that's where we get into the issue. And what I'm looking for is if you've had complaints, I'd like to know about
I've not heard
them.
any complaints about underserving.
So the short answer is I haven't heard any complaints, but
It's just the money. The
what were they
cost
doing
of
up in
it.
central New Hampshire?
We do have
Planning Commission?
accessibility, it's just that you don't want to pay it.
Yeah, and there are people that don't want it,
That's correct.
so.
But we do have
Right.
accessibility.
So I just, that's the easy one. I'm going to give you
No,
a
just-
fun one.
Just one more second, Bill. I think there are a lot of people that would be dissatisfied if they were having to depend upon Fairpoint, and so they're not. They're going to other means and methods and paying that price. If you talk about, is the town served adequately by Twisted Pair or whatever, I would say no. Because, and the other problem with Comcast is that when multiple people in your neighborhood get on the internet, you slow down to a crawl. I mean, they talk about offering 10 meg, but they don't guarantee that ever. They just tell you can get it as much as that when the day's really nice, the temperature's great, skies are clear, and nobody else is using the line. There's no guarantees as to what people can get, and so there's a lot of frustration, I think. People that are trying to work from home or something like that can't get it, but they're not complaining to us because we can't do anything about it, and they're smart enough to know that.
Can't get the speed they need at the time they want it.
Right.
Okay. And the other issue becomes, can a municipality keep up with the technology that's changing so fast that we don't even know what the next level is? I mean, we've got this white space coming in that they may be using internet over a white space that right now is reserved for pieces of television coming up. Okay, you answered my question. Now comes the easy one. There's a bunch of suits, and you probably have heard them, that went up to at least the Superior Court regarding evaluations of utility property. Normally, the utility evaluation is done by DRA, Department of Revenue Admin. that commissioner just resigned also, so maybe that's, I don't think this is a reason for it. But the Supreme Court came back and said, what happened is the assessors came into town, said you were assessing this at this value, the new assessment is here, therefore you can get more tax revenue from it. And the utility said, well, wait a minute, that's out of line, that's up 30%, 40%. Went to the courts. The court said the different methods, and there's 4 or 5 different methods of evaluating property, are all acceptable. So we threw out the suits. And what they did say was, because the legislature didn't specify which one, then you need to go back if you want some relief, go to the legislature. If you remember a couple of years ago, we had the same thing with utility poles. Different towns were doing it differently. So the legislature said, okay, here's the fix. The new evaluation is as new construction or as new bought, 40-year depreciation with a 10-year life cycle always thrown on there. That's it, end of question. So now they're looking at, to my committee to come up with something that says what's the right way to go. The issue, and the reason it came to science and tech instead of ways and means, is because if you raise your valuation, you get more taxes for your town, but that goes into the rates for electricity for those that are still, let's say, under the PUC's jurisdiction. Also, if you raise rates on the utility, then you've only got that one utility to fight with instead of trying to spread that tax rate across the whole town. And a bunch of people complain to you. So the issue becomes, I don't know if you have any property in town that has caused you grief? No grief. So
Go. I was going to call on you because you're the one who knows.
Well, House Bill 324. Yeah. Actually, Lauren has we talked about this today. Lauren Martin, our assessor, talked about it, and she wrote me an email, and I'll just give you the highlights. PSNH assessment in the town of Merrimack is $106 million. This does not include land and land rights, which add value to this. PSNH's book value is $89 million for the town of Merrimack. If we use the DRA assessment, which DRA is proposing we use, our assessment would be $53 million. So what would happen, we'd lose the difference between 106 and 53, which is about $53 million. But that gets spread out through all our other communities in town, meaning Amherst, the Bedfords, the Manchesters, the Nashores of the world. She basically has gone on to say that Merrimack has not had an abatement or appeals with PSNH. PSNH, Eversource, has done significant upgrades to their transmission stations in the town of Merrimack, which increases the value. The Board of Tax and Land Appeals found in recent Eversource and NHEC appeals that DRA values were not properly valuing the properties in each community and should be not the basis for the local taxation. And that's what Representative Barry was saying, is the Supreme Court upheld that decision. It would cost the town of Merrimack, and the tax rate would go up based on that if we had to lower our utility valuations.
But we don't have to.
Well, right now, but if this House Bill 324 comes out and gets passed, we'll be forced to use the DRA method, which is going to cost us $53 million of assessed value.
So we don't want
it. So anybody who's looked at me said, "What, are you crazy? Why would you let that happen?" Well, if it continues, what's going to happen to your electric rates? Because they've got the utility is not going to say, "Oh, okay, I'll just put it in a different pocket and do something with it." It gets rolled into the electric rates, and the more you keep running after more taxable income from that kind of an entity, the higher your tax rates go. And by the way, when I signed on for this job, I signed on saying I want to take the state's electric rates and drive them down, because right now we're the 4th or 5th highest in the country. And we will continue to lose employers, so.
Dick, I get what you're saying, and I guess in different things, you know, I guess I'm skeptical that if we did go with this law, that our electric rates would go down.
See, I don't think they will.
I just feel like it would just be more profit for them. And I don't believe it. I actually want something in place to show me over a period of time that our rates are going down, because I don't believe it. I think that they'd say, great, we just saved some money, it's going right into the coffers.
And then not even just lower, just leave it the same. And just them, I concur.
So, and I don't know if there's something in place in the legislation that could say, well, you know, show us a return on this.
No, that's one of the things that was brought up, was when you change it, we have to change it. Because you don't want to keep paying for the suits that everybody else, the lawsuits that are going on, because they're impacting you one way or the other. We will change it. One of the things was, well, there's a couple of things. Which evaluation method do we use so it's fair across all towns? Because right now, if somebody else's town is higher than, they're using a higher assessed kind of evaluation, then our citizens, our ratepayers are paying a higher rate because it's already in the electric bills.
So the methodology.
So that's already starting. Number two, when it changes, and it will have to get leveled out, if there's a significant difference between what you're doing now, what you're collecting now, and what you're going to collect in the future, then we've got to phase it in. Like if it's more than a 5%, I want to go 2 years, 5 years, whatever, to phase it in so that it's even across the state. And the third piece is what Councilor Albert mentioned. I want verification that they've taken that and roll it into rate reductions.
Thank you. You answered my question. Thank you. I just wanted, that's got to be in there, because.
Otherwise,
No,
yeah. Otherwise,
it's not my
they'll
first
save the
rodeo.
money and keep it, not pass it on to the consumer in terms of savings.
It's not my first rodeo. I got the same problem with energy efficiency for low-income people. And they say, oh, yeah, we're doing it. We're giving the landlord some money so that they can take care of the low income. Show me where you reduce the rent. I've got lawyers looking at that for me. So have you haven't had a problem yet, other than, gee, here's a way to get more free tax revenue?
Well, no, we haven't had a problem with Eversource with the way we value. The one thing I would have to say is the methodology, because the state methodology says $53 million, and Eversource is even saying, well, we got $89 million in the town of Merrimack. Right alone, right there is a
So they
$36 million.
acknowledge a certain amount.
They're acknowledging a certain amount, $36 million more than what the state's saying
So
in
the
the
state's wrong.
valuation.
And I would think that's a timing issue. I got the results for 110 communities.
I'm sure you did. I'm only looking at the email that I got there, but
Could I request that you verify with Paul the amount and see what the discrepancy is?
No, he's completely capable of doing that.
I understand, but if
that's
you're
outside
being
mine.
told a certain amount of money and he's going, the PSNH is saying it's 89 million, and you're hearing it's 54, that's significantly different. So I would like to think if PSNH is agreeing that it's 89, that's the value, then we should accept what PSNH is saying versus the 54, which is what the state's reporting.
Well, okay,
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Let me back up. You as councilors have the responsibility to value the property in town your way.
And we
Okay.
are, but the state
And
telling us it's
you
54.
can negotiate with people as you have done in the past.
Yeah, but-
And if they're agreeing to the higher assessed valuation.
Right, then
unit,
if they're agreeing and we agreeing, we should be able to
and then the
maintain that.
DRA gets note of that because they are tracking that too.
Well, I think Nancy's point is that apparently DRA is doing it incorrectly, because if there's an admission by the property owner that it's one thing and DRA is telling us it's
Oh, no, it's
substantially
less.
lower, that's a problem.
Let's back up a bit. But as I said, there are 4 different methods of evaluation of any property. The issue becomes with utility property is they don't turn over like houses. So you can't look at what's a recent sale on them. How many times has
So what
Zebra
you're saying,
turned
it
over?
might not have been caught up yet.
That's right.
Okay.
That's where I'm at.
And I guess what I'm saying is there a way of verifying that it's caught up?
I'll have Lauren look into that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jackie?
I have a few questions.
Oh, look at that.
Aren't you glad I stuck around?
Look at the look.
I got only one. Something I don't understand is that there's a Public Utility Commission that reviews all the accounting methods and so forth for all the public utilities. And-
For those that are regulated. There are
Yes.
several that are not regulated.
What do they,
Oh,
what do
yeah.
they do?
What is it? There's some collectives, some
Oh, the New
CLECs.
Hampshire Co-op, for
There's-
example?
Yeah, and then there's a couple of the big guys that are no longer regulated, and pretty soon you won't have any because the sale was just announced for the Bow plant
Mhm.
from Eversource, so they will no longer have generation, and that's generally what is the last of the regulated utilities.
Oh,
But
okay.
there's still, you still have the evaluation, and you still have to go through the PUC rate-setting process. It's a little different for unregulated versus regulated.
Okay, they do have to go through the accounting, the examination of their accounting?
Not
To
all
set
of
the
them, though.
rates?
Not all of them.
Not
You
all
got-
of them.
You got some locals that, that don't have to
But
even.
Eversource would.
Once Bow was sold and turned over,
Uh-huh.
I think, and
Okay. 'Cause-
the neat thing is it's gonna be around for 3 years anyhow.
Okay, because what I'm kind of driving at is that it does seem like, and I know you've covered it, but I don't quite get the finer points of some of these arguments. It seems to me that we're just whipping ourselves by upping the assessment on these properties, on the poles and so forth, because it's just going to be okayed by the PUC to wrap it into our rates. And furthermore, if Merrimack did go off on our own and assess the property the way we choose, they're not going to just adjust our rates. You know, it's a company-wide
Yes,
thing.
yeah.
They're not going to separate out the 03054.
And it's not just for residential, it's also for commercial and industrial.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It seems to
it's
me
there.
that, I guess, frankly, I guess to square one, I'm not sure why we assessed a company that's just merely going to completely,
Pass it back.
by law and by rule, just tack it right onto their revenues.
Well, let me put a different hat on and help you with that. You tax hospitals? No, you don't have, but you tax grocery stores, right? You tax the mall. Guess who pays those taxes? We do, one way or the other. So it comes back to us.
Yeah, that's true.
I think there's a responsibility for the town to look at what the values are within a town and make a value judgment, because you've got a chance to spread the wealth over all of the citizens, and the businesses will pay a fair share, they expect to. But, well, let me tell you, you've got BAE Systems, and I don't know what your tax is on them, but when the smoke settles, we pay for it. Every time the feds buy something from BAE, it comes out of our taxes, so what goes
That's
around
true
comes
enough.
around.
True enough.
So you have the I had a proposal, because you have the responsibility to do that, and I had a proposal that says, tax them any way you want. However, we'll allow the utility to put a little rate structure in there that says, here's what you tax me, and there's a percentage I've got to get back from the people in the 03054 zone. I don't think we want to go there.
No, not a good idea.
That's not a good idea. No. But remember, with taxing authority, you also have the responsibility to your constituents to say, here's how I'm spending your money accurately.
They remind us of that a lot of time. Our constituents remind us about that.
So my job is to find an assessing method that's acceptable to both parties, that is fair across the state. And what's going on now is not fair across the state. So if you have suggestions and inputs to it,
Okay.
not okay, I mean, shortly, like,
Well, I don't have,
tonight,
I
you've
don't
got-
have the knowledge to be able to present to you a legitimate method, but I do trust that Paul,
no, Paul, neither does Paul, I'm sorry. There's 4 out there, we've
than
heard,
me.
I've sat down with the Assessing Standards Board, I went and sat with them, and they're trying to look at this saying, oh, we got these, and these are the different characteristics. Don't pick on Paul for that piece of it.
so
Just be aware that
be aware of it. Okay.
that it's coming down. It has to be addressed, and those are the bigger issues rather than,
Gotcha.
ooh, I'm going to lose this tax revenue for this piece of it.
Understood. Any questions?
I'm done if
of the
you're
fine rep
done
while
with
he's
me.
here? Thank you very much for
Thank you.
coming,
Thank you, Dick.
Representative Barry. Thank you for sticking around, too. Okay, old business, committee appointments. First of all, I have to apologize. I do have the paperwork, but I was negligent in having copies made. Yes.
Can I do my town manager's report, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, we called you back. Let's do the town manager's report.
And I'll try to be as quick as possible.
Go right
Thank you,
ahead.
Madam Chair. Recently, 24 town employees and volunteers of the town became certified in the American Red Cross CPR, AED, and first aid. The course was taught internally by our Parks and Rec director and a Red Cross, and who is a Red Cross instructor, Matt Kasparius. The planning board will be having preliminary traffic meeting with developers proposing multi-family residential development on Executive Park Drive on October 17th, next Tuesday, at 7 p.m. The applicant has not yet formally filed an application for the site plan, but wishes to engage the planning board and the public in a discussion of potential mitigation strategies for the traffic impacts in of the potential development. Staff anticipates that the developer will make a final decision on filing a formal application or not shortly after this meeting. It should be noted that the preliminary design review meeting is a non-binding discussion, and any feedback from the planning board during the design review meeting is only advisory until the formal application is submitted and a public hearing is in process. Due to the ongoing upgrades with the town's website, the Planning and Zoning Board information will not be on the website at this time. If you'd like the information, please follow at ComDEV Merrimack on Twitter for information, agendas, minutes, etc. during this upgrade period. And we should be out for about another 10 business days. And finally, the library and St. Joseph's Community Services Meals on Wheels are partnering together to deliver library material to the Meals on Wheels clients living in Merrimack. This is a pilot program that the library hopes to expand to those residents who are not on Meals clients. This service is funded by a grant from DCU Credit Union, earmarked for the program to make a difference. Meals on Wheels clients fill out an application noting their preference for library materials. The library's home delivery outreach coordinator will contact the program participant to discuss their selections. Meals on Wheels drivers will deliver materials twice a month along with regular meal delivery and also pick up items and return them back to the library. Any of the library's regular circulation collection is available, large print as well as regular print, DVDs, audiobooks, and magazines. The only thing that's not available is the telescope. At this time, no overdue fines or replacement carts will apply to the St. Joseph's Community Service clients. This policy will be reviewed by the Library Board of Trustees in 6 months. This is a collaborative effort, and we hope to grow the program to bring the library to Merrimack residents who cannot get there.
Nice.
Thank you.
Very good. Yes, Finley?
Paul, not for discussion tonight, but I was wondering if I might be able to get information on when we started allowing residential to go into executive drive, and I include the extended stay that is now there. When did these changes come about, if you could get that for me?
Tim knows that, if you want Tom
Tim
to
might
answer
be
that
able
question.
to.
Because it's the craziest thing in the world to me, that's what's happening down there.
The hotel was a permitted use under the zoning ordinance. Hotels are permitted in that commercial district, so
Right.
that was permitted under the zoning.
Understood, it's just a different type of hotel.
In terms of the multifamily, that was approved through special exception and variances by the zoning board in May. They granted the exception and the variances to allow the density of 280 units and for the location, in that location on the opposite side of the turnpike where multifamily typically is not allowed under our ordinance.
Okay, could you refresh my and that's why I don't want to burn up too much
Sure.
more time on this, because it's a long evening, but it was 2 or 3 years ago, there was a proposal.
There was a
that came-
similar proposal by a different developer with a different density and a different proposal that had gone to the zoning board and was denied.
And it was a lesser density,
It was a
wasn't it?
lesser density, correct.
Thank you, Tom.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate it, Tim. Okay. Thank you, sorry.
That's all right. Okay, old business, as I was saying, let me read it first. Committee appointments. Town council to consider appointing the following individual to the town committee, and that is Richard Kinescu, the zoning board of adjustment. He was interviewed, he has been recommended, and I apologize for not having the paperwork printed for you. So, it was recommended, so. He is presently a member, so this is a reappointment. Can we have a discussion?
I actually met with Patrick, the chairman, and I met with Richard, and he's been working with the zoning board for a period of time now. At least, yeah, I think he's in his second term currently, but I'm not positive on that. He's very involved in the community, outside, within the town, but outside of town, committees and so on, and he'll do a really nice job and continue to do so.
Any other questions? Could we have a entertain a motion? Oh, Tom.
Probably don't want to bring all this together at this point, but you were just questioning the actions of the zoning board. And I'm wondering if any of that kind of discussion came up in talking with Richard and Patrick, or
Well, believe it or not, it did, but I didn't have the answers, which is why I threw it out there tonight, because what has happened down there is a little frustrating for me. Because I almost never testify at a zoning hearing or a planning board. I try to avoid that because amazingly, we do carry a little bit of extra clout if we say something, and so that's why I try to steer away from it. But I did speak at that zoning hearing 2 or 3 years ago, and as all of this started to pile on, I wasn't paying attention apparently, because I would have gone down again, and it just, I don't know. So I didn't have my information together. We informally chatted about it, Patrick and I did, and so no, I apologize, should have.
I guess the reason I brought it back up in question, not necessarily that I don't want to approve Richard Kinescu, is that we seem to approve everybody that comes forward for the zoning board. Sometimes because we're afraid we don't have anybody else or any other opportunities or something like that. And at some point in time, I guess we need to make sure the zoning board and the planning board and the town council are all kind of walking on the same trail. And if they're developing in areas by granting variances and things like that without even an argument, then maybe things aren't where they ought to be, and we ought to be reviewing that more carefully.
That's probably worth an interesting conversation, because I guess my knee-jerk is, if the chair feels that the applicant has been working well, then there's really no reason for us not to appoint. On the other hand, I do understand your underlying premise, which is, what is our role? I guess that's my question, in terms of the kinds of decisions the ZBA is making. Part of me is going, do we even have a role? I mean, they're a quasi-judicial, independent committee that we can have our opinions.
Well, they represent us. I mean, really, we're appointing them, and that's by the nature of us doing the appointing, it should represent our,
So how do you
accumulated-
influence that then?
I mean,
You understand my dilemma?
Absolutely, and
I don't know what the answer
I
is.
don't, I mean, it's not an easy answer because it's really hard to vote no for somebody. But it's our responsibility and our job to do that if it's appropriate. I mean, you look at the state legislature and the makeup of that, if you look at any quasi-judicial or judicial program, it's made up of people with opinions. And we're constantly trying to get people with the opinions that we share on those boards. The Supreme Court is an amazing example of the fear that the nation has over who's going to be sitting in the next vacant seat and stuff like that. So we do have a responsibility to appoint people that we believe are going to have the best interest of Merrimack at heart and not necessarily this group's or that group's. But we have the problem that we have our own particular interest as well, and so we're always trying to balance that out.
Yeah, exactly.
And but simply rubber stamping, which is what it appears to be sometimes, I don't think is necessarily serving that purpose. Although we don't really know enough about these individuals or their philosophies or where we need better guidance, I think, from community development and our
Right.
staff as to where the different members of these boards should be
Tim
going
has an
and what should
opinion.
happen.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's extraordinarily difficult to express opinions through a zoning board simply because, and I'll put it this way, the zoning board is the one body in town where I cannot make recommendations to them. They are bound by the criteria that the state sets forward through the courts and through law as to these are what has to be met in order to grant a variance, and the ordinance language is plain what they need to do to grant a special exception. It's inappropriate for me as staff or anybody as staff to try to influence the board. They have to make their decision based on the facts of law. So the zoning board is that one board in town where it's extraordinarily difficult to get a read on people before you appoint them to the
Right.
board. And it's not appropriate for me to comment on how they perform once they're there because ultimately they have to make the decision they feel is the best in accordance with those criteria that the state sets forward.
That's pretty much expresses my
I
frustration.
get it, and I understand, and I appreciate the position you're in, but I also know that sitting on the planning board, I've been really amazed a couple of times when zoning board approvals have come through, and now the planning board has to make some statement because the zoning board has kicked it over to the planning board, or they've approved a variance. It just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, and
Is there an appeal process at all?
not within the town.
I know there's, as an applicant, there's an appeal process.
There
But there
are,
isn't,
the council as a body, I believe would be, I'd have to check some of the case law, but I believe the council as a body would be somebody that that the court would consider have standing to file. First would have to be a request for rehearing because that's the administrative process that a zoning board has to go through. And failing the rehearing occurring, then it goes to Superior Court. I believe there was a case in Hooksett some number of years ago where the Conservation Commission tried to file an appeal, and I believe it was either the Superior Court or the Supreme Court that said that they didn't have standing as a non-elected body to be able to
Gotcha.
appeal the decision. So I'd have to do a little bit of research into that to see if the council as a whole would have that type of standing.
Can you look into how many, actually, do you know how many days from a decision of the ZBA?
It's 30 calendar days in order to file a request for rehearing.
and has that already happened?
It was approved in May.
All right. Takes care of that?
And this case, again, with the most recent variances, before they went to the zoning board, they had actually gone to the planning board and held conceptual discussions, and the planning board was supportive of the overall concept, which is why they decided to move forward to the zoning board in this case.
Oh, planning board. Sure, the planning board was blaming the ZBA.
Where they play against
Yeah,
each other,
ZBA.
and it makes it very difficult.
Peter, go ahead.
And I don't know how far I can or we want to get into it, but, and maybe one of you guys can, Tom or Tim can answer for me, is that they want to, we all have concerns on the traffic at this intersection.
Yep.
I think everybody in the room does. Granted, can we ask them to put in some type of mediation to, to assist
To mitigate
traffic
the
in that
impacts
area?
of the development they're proposing, yes.
Okay, because,
To solve the existing issues, no.
okay, because, I've thought of one that I knew that, you got Z1 Express, and I think that's called Fringe Tree Lane. And it runs between the child care center and there. And I knew there was plans at one point, they thought about taking that lane and going straight through to Amherst Road. They got to cross that brook there. But is that an alternative or something to be thought about by the powers that be involved in this thought process?
There would need to be, under U.S. law and case law, a rational nexus between the impacts of the development and the types of mitigation and costs that the developer would be responsible for mitigating. I would have a hard time saying that the traffic added by the apartments would be enough to generate that type of off-site improvement.
Well,
Can I have a point of
Yes.
order here? We really have gotten off the appointment.
Yeah, you're right, I apologize.
And Tuesday night, traffic,
And it's
planning
all
board.
your fault.
See you there.
And all that being said, Richard will do a good job. I'm very, very happy on his choice.
Okay, could I ask for a motion to accept?
I'll
think Finley
move.
just made
I
that
did.
motion.
I
Oh,
thought
Finley,
we
I'm
did, but
sorry.
maybe I didn't, yes.
Okay, Finley
I move that
Roughhouse
we, right.
made the motion, second.
Second.
Tom Koenig. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's 6-1-0. Bill Boyd in opposition. Now, I would like to recommend that if we want to get into a somewhat of a discussion, let's do an agenda item about that. About our role and whatever, if someone's interested. Okay, Paul, MS 434 review, tabled from the September 28th meeting, submitted by you, Paul. Town Council will present with the details of the undesignated fund balance as it relates to the 217 MS 434.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to apologize about the confusion for the last time this came before the council. There was a lot of moving parts and information was not clearly presented, and I want to apologize for that. As we closed out June 30th, 2016, we added approximately $597,000 to the unreserved fund balance, undesignated fund balance, sorry. We began the year at $6 million, about $6.6 million. We added about $597,000 to that to come up with the estimated undesignated fund balance at the end of the year of $7,240,000. At last meeting, the council voted to put $450,000 towards tax relief of this money. It leaves a balance of about $6.8 million roughly. Some ways the council can look at the $6.8 million is they have a fund balance policy actually in place, and emergency appropriations is one way you can use it. Capital projects. You could transfer it into capital reserve funds. Those two items that I just talked about, capital projects and capital reserve funds, what you would have to do if you want to use some of this undesignated fund balance for those, you would have to go in front of town vote, and they would have to be put on as a warrant article. And then, of course, you can reduce the tax rate, which you guys have done by putting $450,000 towards tax relief, or any other non-occurring appropriation deemed appropriate by council. And once again, that would also have to go in front of the town vote. I have the revenues that we have. One of the big revenues, as I always come in front of you, I talk about, the big three, interest, automobile registrations, and building permits. In looking at what was proposed during the budget process last year for motor vehicle permits, I increased that up to $4.9 million because we have seen an uptick in our auto registrations over the last several years, and we feel that that's still going to bring us to where the automobiles will be when we register our automobiles. Interest was we were always told, wait, we're going to raise them. The Fed said they were going to raise interest rates, they're going to raise interest rates. Well, the Fed started to loosen that belt and they started to raise interest rates a little bit, so we did see an uptick. Another reason why we saw an uptick in our interest is because of the competition that banks want to have the town of Merrimack on their ledger, because then they're going to use that with other communities and say, we're good enough for the town of Merrimack, you should invest in us too. So I used that as a bargaining chip with them to get us better rates. So we have been seeing an uptick, and we raised that from $75,000 up to $150,000 on this MS 434. So if you go to the bottom line, when all is said and done, we have about $22,674,000 worth of revenue that we're expecting from non-tax purposes. We're going to use, that includes the $450,000. Last year, our tax rate was $4.91 for the municipality. This year, I'm estimating our tax rate after the $450,000 reduction to be $4.92.
Up a penny.
Up a penny.
Wow.
And I am waiting to get into the queue so we can get our tax rate set. So once I have your approval on this document, I can sign it and send it into DRA, and then I can force their hand to get me a tax rate setting date, and then we can get the tax bills out.
Nice. Pete?
Paul, the $4.92, are you taking into account like the cost of living type of stuff increases as far as insurance and things going forward for the upcoming year?
That is everything that it was voted on back in April.
Okay.
That's the appropriations from April, which were roughly $38 million that the town have voted on as an appropriation for the municipality. And that, including in that $38 million was the $3.3 million bond. So
Thanks.
it is included all that.
Any other questions?
We're just needing to accept the
Report?
I guess there was questions last time on some of the numbers, so if you're okay with what I presented for increasing motor vehicles and increasing interest, and then the $450,000 to offset for undesignated fund balance, you did, so all I need is...
Do we need a motion to accept the report?
You can give me a motion, that would be more...
Madam Chair, move approval of the 2017 MS 434 document as presented.
Motion made by Bill Boyd, second by Peter Albert. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, 700.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
And during the tax, because you know that we have roughly, $6.7 million, if during the budget season, if you want to put something on the warrant for use of this fund balance, undesignated fund balance, we can definitely start talking about it at that time and moving forward. And that would be the most opportune time if you're thinking of a capital project or moving some of this money maybe into a special capital reserve fund.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, new business. I'm sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Can I make a suggestion when it comes to new business? Since number 1 just concerns us, could we move up 2 and 3?
No, I'd like to see audience here.
Okay. just a
I
suggestion.
know, I'm a wise guy. I'd be happy to do that. That means our people have to say, but that doesn't matter. Okay, it's fine with me if it's fine with everyone else. So if we go to new business, number 2, Town of Merrimack, Lakeside Drive. Okay, I'll try this name. Bizoki? I wasn't too far off. Easement discussion submitted by Meridian Land Services Environmental Department Manager Thomas E. Carr. Town Council will be presented with a cross easement plan and documents for septic force, main, and water line under road and road over private property. Don Tuamala is also here. That's fine.
Still warming up.
We should have you do it. Oh, Mark, go right ahead. Okay. Well, I thought Dan was going to entertain us while we were waiting. No?
There we go. Well, thank you, Madam Chair and Town Council. Thank you for having us tonight. We're here tonight to discuss some easements that we need to cross Lakeside Drive. Our clients, Stephen and Diane Bazzacci, own properties down on Lakeside Drive on Babusick Lake. There's actually 3 properties. If you look at the locus, you can see the town line cuts through the Lakeside lot, and they own another lot that's across the street. Here's a close-up of the property. We've done a boundary survey on this, and the existing house is on this lot here, right? There's the existing house, and the septic system is off to the northeast, right in that location there. The septic system has been stressed for years, and we're proposing to replace that septic system on the other property up in that location there. That would be where the leach field is going. There is currently an existing well to the north of that, and there's a water line. We're not sure where that line goes, but it does currently cross under the road to the house. As part of the proposal to replace the septic system, we are going to replace that line under the road in that easement location and wrap it into the north side of the house. There will still be a septic tank with a pump chamber in the location where the septic system currently is. It will come toward the south along the edge of the building and then turn and go up through that easement there across onto lot 6A1151 and pump to the leach field. So the objective here is to try and get the leach field further away from the lake to enhance water quality and comply as best we can with the state and local regulations regarding septic systems. So we submitted this plan to Don for review at DPW, and in the process of them reviewing this, it became obvious that the town road, Lakeside Drive, is actually built over a portion of their land. So what we're intending to do with this plan is to swap easements between the town and the Bazzaccis so that the use can be legitimized and legalized with a plan and the documents. The Bazzacci's attorneys have prepared the legal documents to back the plan. They've been submitted, they've been revised, and they were final revisions came back just this afternoon to Don, and I believe they're in the town's attorneys has reviewed them, and the revisions that were requested have been made. So we are at a final point right now, and we're asking the council to consider this and allow us to have signatures on the easement deed so that we can record this and get the septic system replaced.
Thank you. Okay, questions from the council? Pete?
I'm just curious, obviously you got 2 trenches, and how you would propose to approach it and how long it would take, because I've noticed looking at the map, I know that's a dead end north of it, and it looks like there's 6 residences that would be impacted coming and going. So how would you guys propose to do that?
They would do it half at a time so that the road could be open, just much like DPW or any trenching crew would approach a road crossing. You would cut half the road, have one-way traffic. It's a small road to begin with, so we'd have to make accommodations for acceptable passage, but that would be how it would be done. It couldn't be stop the world while we cut the road in half. No, it'll be done in 2 halves.
And would this be a one-day job on each?
It's probably 1 day for each of the crossings. It's not, I don't know how far it is. I can look.
A lot of this has been spelled out within the easement deeds themselves, and the road is to be restored back to an acceptable condition, and they'll have to still pull a right-of-way permit when they go to do all this work.
It'll probably be restored better, because I just drove down it to get my complete bearings.
Any other questions, Jackie?
Yes, yes. Now, do the owners of the Lakeside property also own that lot across the way?
Yes, they do. Yeah.
Okay. Because I wasn't sure where, I was confused about who Mr. Wheeler is. And what he has, he has
Those
the
are
other
two-
lot.
Those are two different
property.
lots, and Mr. Wheeler owns the lots down here, which is, you'll see
Okay.
very shortly.
All right.
And they have nothing to do with one another. These houses were built probably in the same era, so therefore,
Coincidentally.
they're gonna fail at the same time, so that's what's happened.
Makes sense.
Yes, Pete?
Just, and I know one of the things that makes this an attractive project is it's getting, as Don said, away from the lake, getting the septic away from the lake. So what happens with the old septic system, the old leach?
The septic tanks that are there now for the existing system, those will be pumped out and removed. The existing leach field is just simply abandoned in place. We don't really know what's there, whether it's a dry well or a leach field. It's unknown what it is. It's not breaking out on the surface, but it does tend to flush a little slower in the summer when they're using it, and it needs to be replaced. Yeah.
Yes, Tom?
There appears to be a lot of effort here to do multiple crossings and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about what you're trying to do? Are you trying to get to the outside edges of the property? Is that why there's two different crossings at two different locations?
Right. We obviously can't put the water line and the septic line in the same trench because of separation distances and cross-contamination concerns. We know that the existing water line comes down somewhere on that northern side where the green is. Like I said, we don't know exactly where it is, but we're trying to make an effort to plat that and put the line in the right location. They're going to make some upgrades to the house, so it makes sense to upgrade that line. Now, if you look at, if I could just borrow your mouse for a second there, Don. Right here, you see this line right here?
Yeah.
There's a retaining wall, and that's it's pretty nice. It's been there a long time. It's a concrete retaining wall, and they park in this area here. And the reason why we're not coming out and crossing right here and coming up is because we're trying to get around that. We're trying to limit the disturbance to the area, and particularly this is actually in the right-of-way. So the retaining wall ends right here. You can see on this plan that there's multiple tracks. In the Buzzacchi's deeds, there's a tract here, which is an old 10-foot right-of-way. There's another tract here. There's another tract here. There's a tract here. Here's another tract that was a 10-foot right-of-way, another tract, and then another tract for a 10-foot right-of-way. When this subdivision was done way back in, I don't even know, when, do you have any idea when that was done?
Back when they invented dirt.
Yeah,
probably,
it's the same thing in Amherst. There's these track lines, these 10-foot paths, so that everybody could gain access to the lake. Nothing was ever platted well, nothing was monumented well. Houses were built on these 10-foot right-of-ways. In fact, the neighbor's house here, Joe English and Don Herman, they have a track line that runs underneath the house, the continuation of this track line. So based on the condition of the retaining wall here, it's in good condition. There's no reason to cut through it. It just made sense to bring the sewer line down here and up this, through this section where there was a tract line, and get the two separated.
Okay. I appreciate the description of the retaining wall. I didn't realize that's what that was. There's so many lines on there, I have no clue what they are. On this other side, where you are putting the sewer, there's a couple of lines that almost look like a driveway or something that goes up there.
Right, this is an asphalt driveway right here. And like I said, they have some other plans out here. They'd like to tear this garage down. This is beyond the scope. This is part of a shoreline permit, but some of this is going to get improved. They're going to take this driveway out entirely, and restore it vegetation-wise. Really what, in the end, it'll be a large upgrade to the lake and to the community.
That sounds good. And just one other quick question. The water is coming across through that green area now?
Well,
And down
like I
through the
said,
septic
we don't
system,
know.
or-
Yeah, well, see, that's, we don't know where that line goes, actually. We know that the line comes in over here. The septic line actually comes out here.
Yeah.
And there's a tank, I can't remember which side of the walkway it's on, but, yeah, this side. And there's whatever's leach field is right here. Now, the water line comes in over here, so somehow, that line goes through under next to
A leach field.
the leach field, so.
Which is a violation of what you just said, you had to keep the line separate, right?
Yeah, but this is all,
Well, when it was
ancient
done,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, ancient stuff.
Okay,
So-
well, thanks for the clarification, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Motion by Bill Boyd,
Second.
second by Dan Dwyer. Any other questions or further discussion?
Just for clarification, this easement does have the cross easement effect so that it settles the issues with the street being on their property, or
Yes.
Yes, it
built
does.
in? So it's one document that's
There's an
handling both?
easement,
Two.
there's
It's
two
two
documents.
documents,
There's
so
an
we're-
easement for the sewer and water that the town grants to the Bazachis, then there's a second easement for the road over their land, granting,
In perpetuity.
egress and,
Yeah.
in perpetuity.
Are those-
for- Yeah.
Both in the same motion, or is there two different items we have to handle?
Same motion.
Same motion, and would you like the town manager to be able to sign?
Could we add that,
Documents,
Bill?
that'd be
Would you be
great.
able to add that to your motion?
Why not? Absolutely.
Yeah, yes, that'd be good.
Or
Or
designate?
designate.
Do you want me to rephrase my motion?
Nope, that's
No.
fine, as long as you're agreeing to add that.
Yep.
Okay,
I thought.
that thought. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? None. 700.
Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
And on this vein, while we're talking about easements, Town of Merrimack, Lakeside Drive, Grennan and Wheeler easement discussion, submitted by Thomas F. Quinn Esquire. And Dawn, you're staying for this one as well?
Yes.
See, you're just an important person tonight.
Very.
Town Council to be presented with a cross easement plan and documents for septic force main and water line under road and road over private property. So go right ahead.
Good evening. My name is Tom Quinn, and I'm here on behalf of Mr. Grennan and Mr. Wheeler. From looking at the map, you will recognize the neighborhood. We're property immediately to the south of the property that you just considered. And you can see we own 4 lots, 103, 104. The other ones are, oh, it's upside down. No, it isn't.
No.
Don't
Yeah,
confuse
it
us
is.
with upside
it's
down.
I'm sorry, but
I'm gonna
I
have to
can't
move
read
so
it.
I can
you
see
bring
it.
into- The top one is 153, and the bottom one must be 154.
Yeah, they're in there.
Okay. So, we have basically the same issue. The septic system was failing. The surveyors went out and started to design a plan and discovered the encroachments. Our case is a little different in the sense that the corner of the house, the deck, and the septic tank beneath the deck are all built within the limits of the historic right-of-way. That's possible because it turns out that the road is not constructed within the limits of the right-of-way, so there was plenty of room. What we propose to do is to exchange easements with the town. The owners of the property, the Wheelers, Mr. Wheeler, would grant to the town easement B and C, allowing the roadway to remain as constructed rather than as originally laid out in 1927.
So the
And-
gray area is where the existing road is, it shows on this one better, so
Right.
B and C are these two easements.
And that's where the gravel road is. So that's where the gravel road is, and the easement that Mr. Wheeler will grant to the town allows that to continue for all purposes, used as a public way. A is within the right-of-way, and D, which is a crossing of the roadway, will allow the buildings and improvements, septic tank to remain as is. D will allow a sewer line crossing. It's already there, but it will allow a sewer line crossing. At that point, it hits the area that Don is highlighting now, known as easement E. Then it will connect to easement F, which is on lot 75. E and F technically don't involve the town because it's easements on private property. But so you can understand more fully what's happening, we've included that in the exhibit, and it'll be included on the plan that's recorded at the Registry of Deeds. So that's really it in a nutshell as far as the presentation is concerned. Mr. Wheeler would give B and C and receive A and D.
Okay, questions? Pete?
I guess I'd ask the same question. As far as coming across the road, how long would this, how long do we expect this to take? And in light of the other two road crossings, I mean, this is a lot of work on that little road. And
Right.
there's a lot of people.
The likelihood that it would be done in conjunction with the other project is pretty slight because it's, separate owners, and we don't have a final design yet. The design of our septic system is conditioned upon getting these easements, so we've got a way to go before we even get an approved design. That being said, one of the conditions in the easement deed that the town is granting us contains provisions that our work would be done in such a way as to cause as minimal impact to the public as possible. So we would work with the town to make sure that, we don't trench from one end to the other and block it off all day long. It'll be done expeditiously.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, move approval of the easement as presented with the instructions that the town manager or her proxy be authorized to sign the easement deed necessary to complete the transaction.
Motion made by Bill Boyd, second by
Second. Whoever.
Peter Albert. He was a little faster there, Dave. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. 700. There
Thank you
go.
all.
You're welcome. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, sir.
Good to see you,
Thanks,
Tom.
Don.
Okay. Mr. Dwyer, can we go back now to our... Okay. No, it was a good suggestion. I'm glad you brought it up. Okay, consideration of changes to chapters of the Merrimack Town Code. Again, this is first reading. And the first review chapter is Chapter 19, which is the Conservation Commission. Now, how did you do this last week? Did you do it one at a time, or did you do it as a group?
Yeah.
You did do it one at a time, okay.
I would recommend that we do the first read as one at a
Excellent.
time like we did with the.
Okay, just want to make sure I'm consistent. Hi.
It was such a fast meeting.
I'll tell you, you're going to beat me. Okay, okay, any questions or discussion about changes for the Conservation Commission? Seeing none. Motion?
Move to a second reading and a public hearing.
Motion-
Move to a second reading and a public hearing.
Which would be a public hearing. Okay, Bill Boyd, second.
Thank you.
Dan Dwyer, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, 700. Chapter 27, Heritage Commission. For discussion, any questions, comments? Motion?
Madam Chair, move Chapter 27 to a second reading and a public hearing.
Motion made by Bill Boyd, second by
Second.
Dan Dwyer. Gotta be faster, Finley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. 700. Chapter 111, Conservation Areas. Questions, discussion? Yes, Peter?
I have some discussion on this.
Yep.
I'd like to see us delete section J. And I believe that, I think we had this discussion, an issue arose earlier this year, and I see this as by continuing this, it's going to become a burden to us on our services. I think that Chief Currier made a lot of valid points regarding allowing camping.
Can you give me the site again? I just got to the G. Okay, thank you. I'm with you now.
I mean,
I'm with you.
I just don't think that these locations are geared up for that, and I have concerns about, campfires and everything. I love camping. I have no problem against camping, but I don't think that these are the areas, and that I think there's just too many legal responsibilities to allow it. So I'm asking that we remove that section as well.
Could I ask a question? I don't disagree with your request, but what happens if something like the Girl Scouts want to do a camp thing, where special permission would have to be acquired from the town manager or something? That's what I'm thinking. If there might be exceptions.
That's the way it's currently set up, is you must have a permit in order to do overnight camping within a town conservation area.
Okay, but we're not going to be allowed.
It's silent. If we get rid of J, it's silent, and that's why I think it should be, because I agree. I don't want to set up where we have to have campsite areas and all that.
Correct, right.
However, I'm not opposed to some, but I said the story before, back when my brother-in-law was like 13 or 14, he, my little brother, and the big brother, big sister brother, and I went up to Greater Woods is what it was and what it is now, and we spent the night, and that was harmless. It wasn't like it was set up for anything, and I wouldn't have a problem with people doing that. And by leaving this out, I'm in favor of that, because I don't want to have to permit it or come up with some formal nightmare.
I guess as written, I'm looking at it as, okay, so I'm 21 and I get a permit, and how many people are going to be there?
Well, I don't think,
Well,
I agree with you on the permit. I don't want to do it.
You can't just automatically have a permit. You have to go get one.
Yeah, but I mean, so I get one, and I tell you, there's going to be 4 people there. I decide that they all bring friends, and now we've got 20 people there, and now the police and the fire have to come down and deal with this. Excuse me?
And he's waiving his permit when he comes upon your group of 40 people and cakes and.
And this is where this is, again, I don't want to be like a wet blanket on this issue, but I just see this as, now you've got the police officers are trying to deal with this, and the fire department's trying to deal with this, and I think, at least the way it's written, maybe we need to change the way it's written and revisit it, but, it's too many open ends on that for me.
Finley?
I'm in favor of getting rid of J. I totally agree with that. If somebody crashed there and it was an uneventful thing and we didn't have to call law enforcement, no harm, no foul. You're going to have people who are going to be there drinking and raising Cain anyhow, which we have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, I don't know how often it happens, because I'm 60 now, so I'm not even thinking about those kind of things. But
you also
you're not allowed to go
I'm not
camping anymore. Yes, Dan.
A question, I'm in favor of eliminating it, for the record. So let's say there isn't there. There's nothing to stop the Girl Scouts from coming to the council and asking, hey, we'd like to have a camp out at Wasserman Park, and can we get a permit? By not having this in this written form, that doesn't stop someone from still asking for a special exception. Is that
from the Conservation Commission? Because if you look at item A under this section, it says that no person shall remain, stay, or loiter in any conservation area from half hour after sunset to half hour before sunrise, except under the authorization of the Conservation Commission or designated agents. So there's already that language in there.
That's allowable.
That's allowable.
Okay, then that I feel comfortable.
Me too, right? So there it is. It's right there in number 1. Someone wants to come in and have a larger gathering and have a camp night overnight.
Perfect.
The process is right there in number 1.
Then that makes me, as long as there's something available to do that. That's fine with me.
Yep.
Yes. I could just say that when I reviewed this back in January, when I initially sent these into Becky, I tried to keep away from any substantive changes, knowing that that's really the role for the council, so I have no issue. I will inform Gage Perry, the chair of the Conservation Commission, in case he wants to come to the public hearing on the 26th.
Perfect.
Because I won't be available that night, so I think.
I suspect he'll be okay with that.
I assume he would be, but I will let him know.
Okay, so, when we have a motion, we just have to make sure that that is noted on the change and anything else. Go ahead.
Another thing on this issue,
Yeah.
under 111.3, designation of conservation areas, the area commonly known as Riverside Drive, is that referring to the Ireland property? I believe that's conservation off of Amherst Road there, the old Ireland farm.
I wouldn't know it by a name, I'd only know it by the parcel number.
Okay, because I'm wondering, I didn't kind of see that, I'm wondering if that covers that one. And also, I know that we've got, and I don't know if it's a done deal yet, but the Sklar property along the river is going to be in a new conservation area. And should that be included on here? Is it time for that, or do we have to wait? That's not.
I think that might be a little bit premature,
It's
because
not
I
done
know
deal
the
yet.
Conservation Commission may be coming forth with an idea to establish a steering committee to determine what actually is going to happen with that
Yeah,
property.
it's not actually done yet, right?
And I think the Riverside Drive component, I believe it is at the end, I believe across from Tomasian's.
Yeah, the Ireland's, yeah,
I
right
mean,
next to it, yeah.
right
gotcha.
down in that area. That's what I think, but I don't know.
But I will ask Gage to take a look at that section as well, if he has any suggestions for it for the public hearing.
Yeah.
What?
Greater Woods isn't mentioned, just
Yeah,
seems like
that was-
odd.
What about Horse Hill? I mean, my question was, have we adequately designated the conservation areas in town in this document?
Under 11-3.
Correct.
It would seem like some are missing.
Some are
Well,
missing.
what we can do is just table this, and we'll move it, we'll have to ask Conservation Commission to evaluate it, and bring it back for another first reading.
Move the table.
Table chapter 11 only.
111.
111. Move the table 111.
Could they be added at a public,
You could do it at a public hearing.
So we should
Oh,
probably.
we can.
Oh, sure.
I know it's non-debatable, but.
So
I'm
we
just
could
should
accept
say-
the J change, and then the public hearing, make sure someone's from Conservation, we will have had.
We can.
Okay.
We can vet it internally with Gage and talk to them before it goes on to the public hearing to see what's about Greater Woods,
Make
what
sure the
about
accuracy of the
accuracy of the
areas.
parcels.
Wasserman Park, half of Wasserman Park
Yeah,
is
so
conservation.
the whole, we'll have to get into all of that with them. Yeah.
I don't know, there may be other documents somewhere else that have separate rules and regulations aside from, because I know there are certain properties that allow ATV use, certain properties that do not.
Right.
So I'm not sure
Correct.
if there's a reason why those aren't included here, is
Correct.
because of these particular rules that apply here. That's my understanding, but
Okay.
I'm sure
We can
Gage
get
should.
May
clarification.
very well be true.
What's the pleasure of
Well, there
the
is a table, I
council?
don't know if.
There's a motion on the table on the floor. We probably should vote on that.
Unless you want me to withdraw it.
I don't think you can withdraw.
Did we have a motion on the floor for the conservation
Move to
areas?
No, to table.
Oh, I'm sorry. And who made the motion? I'm sorry.
Bill.
And do we have a second?
It's a non-debatable motion. No second required. I can withdraw it if it's the pleasure of the council.
Yeah, why don't you, just so I
Withdraw
feel.
the motion to table, Madam Chair.
Fine, the motion has been removed, withdrawn. Okay, alternate motion? What's the pleasure? I think I'm confused myself here.
I would suggest that the motion include to move to a public hearing with the subtraction of item J per the discussion here tonight, and further discussion regarding section
Clarification of
111.3.
accuracy of
111.3
areas.
with the Conservation Commission Chairman.
Would you like to move exactly
So
what he
moved.
just said?
So moved.
Well said.
Thank you, Tim.
Bill Boyd, second. Finley Rothaus. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? None. 7-0-0. So we're going to just make a special note on this. So Paul, you'll make note of this?
Yeah, for changes.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, Chapter 142, Parks and Recreation Areas. Yes, Peter.
A couple of things. We're under the first paragraph, or that's just the memo
Okay,
itself,
hold on,
sorry.
hold on.
Check that, but I guess I would go to, based upon what Matt's given us, in regards to Vets Park, it talks about prohibiting swimming activities from the boat ramp. And I would suggest that under this code, we prohibit swimming at Vets Park. And the purpose for me saying that is because where does the boundary line begin on the boat ramp and end? And reality is, right across the lake, we have Wasserman Park with a beach, and we all know, and I know Vets Park very well, there's really no place to, I guess you could climb through the bushes and swim, but it's really not geared for swimming there. So I don't know why we can't make it a non-swimming area. And that way, if there is an issue that arises, maybe, you post it on the rules sign, and you post it, maybe a sign near the boat ramp especially, but just saying no swimming. But that way, if the police or whoever has to enforce it, they can just say, look, there's no swimming here.
Are we talking about 142.14?
Yes.
Access limited.
Yes.
142.14.
Okay, it says swimming activities shall be prohibited from the boat ramp at Veterans Park. So what are you suggesting?
I'm recommending that we change the wording on that from prohibited. I'm just trying to look here. I had it written on the.
Dan, did you have a question?
It's more of a comment.
Yeah,
Pete,
where it says here, the proposed is swimming activities shall be prohibited from the boat ramp. I'm saying the wording should be swimming activities shall be prohibited at Vets Park.
But
Okay.
I have one problem.
Go ahead.
There's a private house there, and that would prevent him from going into the water and swimming in front of his own house.
But that's their private property.
on the
It's not park property.
But his house is in the park.
The water.
Right, but
the water
Is it part of the
estate.
park?
The water estate, they don't own
But the
their-
water's the park. It's a gray, when I'm thinking of it, I'm thinking of that guy's house near the boat ramp, and is he gonna break the law when he wants to go swimming through the bushes, so to speak?
And I think it's just, I look at that rule as how, and I go back to my old days, my working days, and how do I enforce that? And I show up and, okay, is it 20 feet from the boat ramp? Is it right at the boat ramp? Where is it?
Oh, yeah. No, I
Same problem with what you're suggesting, if I'm reading him correctly. If the individual from his house goes out there, is he in front of Veterans Park's beach land, or is he in front of his own house land? How do you tell where that is?
Yeah, I guess to me, it's using common sense when he says, that's my house right there.
What?
To me,
That would be common sense, but
But
I'm not sure everybody ever uses
Some
that.
neighbors don't use common sense. Finley first and then Jackie.
Yeah.
My general thought on not just this type of thing, but on a lot of things, is that I don't want to make it more onerous than it necessarily has to be. The reason that this was suggested is for safety, because of people backing their boats in and that type of thing. I think your point that there's really not a good place to swim because you have to claw through the bushes is why probably nobody swims there. And that's why I don't think it's necessary to go to that level, is my thought. The boat ramp, I think that's correct, because you don't want people, and it's convenient and easy to swim off the boat ramp now, because it's been, all that work's been
That's
done,
been
and
an
it's a
issue.
nice opened up area,
And it's
so you
been
can
an issue.
easily get in and out. And apparently it has been an issue. I wasn't aware of that for sure, but I could see how it would be easy to swim there and so on. So to prevent that, I think is a good thing. To have to worry about the rest, I don't know that it's necessary.
Jackie?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback onto Finley and Dan's thoughts as somebody who lives on a lake. There are a lot of people who like to swim off their boats and stuff, and there's no way we can prevent swimming at the park, I think, because there are lots of people who live on that lake. There's that one man who suggested no swimming at the ramp, and now that I think so again, and I don't mind being blunt about it, he might not just like all that activity right by his house, and not so much the danger of it. No one's ever been hurt. I've seen lots of boat ramps in my life, and no, I don't think anybody's ever been hurt. I'd just as soon get rid of that rule entirely rather than make it more stringent.
So, Jackie, you're suggesting
Well, if the mood of the council was such, but I'd rather.
but you wouldn't be
see no
unhappy
rule.
with it at all, having that whole swimming
whole thing.
prohibition done.
Yeah, I don't see the point, really.
So Pete wants to make it more extensive, and you want to take the whole thing out. Yes, Dan?
I think it just doesn't happen enough to be a problem. And as a minor juvenile delinquency issue
waiting for that to come out.
is probably at hand here. And so that 1 or 2 items during a 3-month season where someone made someone a little uncomfortable or angry because they were swimming where they weren't supposed to, I would just kind of take it as a one-off and I don't know.
Which means what? Take that whole thing out?
I would, I think. I
No
don't-
restriction at all?
Common sense says, yeah, people shouldn't be swimming at the boat ramp. But delinquency of minors is on occasion prevalent.
Tell that to a 12-year-old.
Right.
Bill, and then Pete.
Or even the hot 40-year-old fisherman who wants to just go up to his knees and as he's fishing to cool off. It's just,
Would standing fishing off the
be
boat ramp
considered
be
swimming?
allowed?
I don't know.
Getting your boat off to its trailer to be considered swimming.
Would it be allowed?
Herein lies the problem.
Well, I know.
You should be able to do that, I would think.
I know people do fish off that boat ramp, and they go to the right a little bit, and they bring their children, 8 to 10-year-old kids are with their dad fishing, and as you know, they get a little.
Fall in and get wet.
They get a little bored with, I'm not catching anything right now, and they want to go play in the water, and they jump in, and Dad says, go.
That'll stop you from catching anything.
Bill, and then Pete.
too,
Go
but-
ahead, Bill.
There's a legal term called riparian rights. And what riparian rights does is that it determines the boundary of a piece of property as it relates to either a body of water or a stream or a river. And as the body of water expands or contracts, as the river expands or constricts, it actually can extend somebody's property line to the edge of the course of the water. So that being said, when I look at swimming activities shall be prohibited from the boat ramp at Veterans Park, I'm seeing it's prohibited at the boat ramp, and it's not being prohibited at Veterans Park. But when you follow Pete Albert's language and you take out the boat ramp, I look at it as saying you can't access the lake from Veterans Park. It's not going to prohibit you from swimming in the lake, it's just you can't access the lake from Veterans Park. to
We
swim.
might as well just prohibit it then. It's semantical.
Exactly.
Quandary, yes, Pete?
And I'm really starting to feel like the unfun guy here tonight.
That's why you save this for later.
I know I'm going to be against
Pete, it's in your
camping and
DNA, you
swimming.
can't help it.
I've done both, and I enjoy them. But, no, I'm at the point, you know what it is? And in years of, laws and rules being made, and they literally, the people that have to enforce them find them so unenforceable. So I guess to me, it's if we're, do one or the other. If we're going to do it, do it. If we're
I
not
would
gonna
agree with that.
do it. And so that way the folks.
If you're going to have a policy, either deal with it and, make sure it's fulfilled or take it away, one of the two. Okay, Tom, do you have any opinion?
Yeah, I think you ought to leave it the way it is.
I concur. I don't think I want to restrict.
Leave it like it is in here, like it's recommended, I'm sorry.
Oh. See, I get caught up with the nuances of the damn boat ramp. I mean, I shouldn't say that in public. Darn boat ramp. It's getting a little late. I mean, and this is where you start mincing the meaning. I would like to be able to go out to my knees and fish. Would that be considered swimming?
No.
And if you have the kids there, sitting there, I just don't know if it's necessary.
I think it's clear that people are going to wade in the water when they're trying to get their boat on or off of their
Exactly.
trailer. So there will be people in the water.
I know, but staying there. I mean,
presumably
putting in or
dealing
out of
with a
boat,
boat.
in or out of the boat. But it's not, let's say I have no boat,
Well, then,
and I just want to be able to use
But
that.
it is a boat ramp, and there is safety concerns, and as a former boat owner, I don't have one at the moment, I will soon though, boating is dangerous in the sense you're backing up. You don't need young kids near there. And so I know the whole common sense thing is trying to discourage activity other than getting in and out of the boat ramp. The boat ramp is a place of activity, and it can be a dangerous activity. There's cars and a boat ramp.
So are you suggesting take this as it's written?
I think so, because once you even get your boat in the water, now you're starting it. That's when you're backing it up, and we all know that boat ramp well. It's a tight area, so there shouldn't be swimming there. There shouldn't be.
Okay.
That's the bottom line.
So the question is, go with what's suggested or no swimming at Veterans Park at all?
And you know, if I'm sorry, I don't want to cut anybody off again. I mean, hey, go with it as it's written. But I would, and I'm going to go back on my years of experience. But when somebody calls and complains, and there was an individual here, and he was concerned about that, and when he does, and then the police or whomever goes over there and addresses these folks, and he's not happy because, well, they're in the water, but are they in the water wading? Are they in the water fishing? What are they doing? You know, I guess, you know.
But if there's nothing that restricts them swimming except for the boat ramp, the police say there's nothing illegal about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
So, I mean, you know, I'm fine with leaving it as is. I think we have to have that expectation, maybe.
The Y holds a triathlon there every year. People use Natticook Lake as a part of their training for triathlons. What are they going to? Is a police officer at Veterans Park going to wait out and pull on a swimmer because he happened to start at Wasserman Park because he's doing a loop, training for a triathlon? I'm not trying to be absurd. I'm just saying, there are exceptions. There are some really rare exceptions where this doesn't apply.
I like the way it's written, actually. If you're recommending the boat ramp, then I have to trust your judgment. But okay. So we should probably look for a motion. Yes. Bill?
I have some suggestions.
I'm sorry, go right ahead.
That's okay. Page 1, under section 142-2, park hours, where it says no person may occupy, remain, stay, half hour before sunrise, half hour after sunset. We're looking at having an ice skating rink down at Watson Park where there's going to be night lighting. We have facilities at Wasserman Park where there's night lighting. And there's no language in here that has any type of rule as it relates to lighting at the parks, especially if, and I know this is going to be on another agenda item, if we're looking to move the skate park. I know where the skate park was previously located, where we had a basketball court there. There was night lighting there for kids to be able to play in the summertime under the lights. So I see Matt's raising his hand, so I think I'm about to be.
Go ahead, Matt.
Well, what I would look at in that is that last sentence, no, not intended to include authorized activities. So I would describe, ice skating, which as it is now, and when we move it, the skateboard park goes in as an authorized activity that doesn't need a special exception.
And lights mean authorized.
Yeah, lights mean authorized. And we had kind of the same discussion when we first opened up the function hall last year about, again, it was the same issue.
Right.
Okay, it's an authorized activity inside the building, but which happens to be inside a park.
Gotcha. Does that fulfill?
sentence right there.
Yeah.
What?
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
And then on page 3, under, excuse me, section 142-15, Wasserman Park Beach. First sentence reads, the Wasserman Park Town Beach shall be for the exclusive use of Merrimack residents and their authorized guests. The second sentence reads, non-resident visitors are permitted to use the area only when accompanied by a Merrimack resident or have the appropriate parking pass and affixed to the vehicle. That sentence is contradictory because if you have a non-Merrimack resident being there, they're going to be an authorized guest, and no way are we going to be giving them a parking pass if they're not a Merrimack resident. So I would ask that language be redacted.
That language being the second sentence?
Yep.
The first sentence.
Reread, the first sentence says exclusive use of residents and their guests.
Correct, authorized guests.
Non-resident members are permitted to use only when accompanied by a Merrimack resident,
Which is
i.e. they are the guest of that Merrimack resident.
Right. which is explained in the first sentence. Merrimack residents and their authorized guest.
Or it continues the sentence, I'm reading it, or have the appropriate parking pass affixed to their vehicle, which means the resident maybe stayed at home and he gave the car and parking pass to his cousin from out of town. That's how I read the sentence.
Which is against the rule.
Right,
Which is
they
against
should
the
be
rule.
there with them.
But he goes, hey, where's your pass? Here's
Go
your
ahead,
pass.
Matt
We're
had
not
an answer.
we're not the policing down here. We're not asking people for IDs. You know, this isn't like we're walking down your beach and see if you've got the right Merrimack colors. So I don't have a problem with the way it's written because it's supposed to be kind of an honor system based, and we're not hardcore IDing people who are using the beach.
Matt, let Matt finish first. Go ahead.
I can think of a couple of examples where there would be a non-resident with a pass, and both of which would be employees. My maintenance shed is right next to that parking lot, so my maintenance staff usually parks down there, as does usually my waterfront director. And so usually I'll give them that same pass that we issue to residents, just so that if the police do come through, that they're not getting ticketed. But
There's some exceptions where you would.
But
There's such a person as an authorized guest.
They're employees, they're
But there can still be an authorized guest, so if they have an
Yeah.
appropriate parking pass, they can go down there.
I think the key for me was that they had a pass, which means they went out of their way to get a pass. They weren't trying.
They didn't just show up.
They
Yeah.
didn't just show up. That's the word.
Paul, and then Jackie.
The other way you can get a pass is that it's a business in Merrimack. It's a registered vehicle in the town of Merrimack. And the employee who's authorized to use that registered vehicle
Good point.
lives in Manchester. We have a company in Merrimack who has several vehicles that are registered in the town of Merrimack, and they live in Manchester.
okay, move on.
Jackie, go.
Okay, all of these exceptions are not allowed by the rules, and either we're gonna have a rule or we're not. We're gonna have
What's not allowed by the rules?
The vote was,
Residents.
the vote was not for taxpayers to be able to, which I would be in favor of. People own, buildings in Merrimack and they don't live here, they should be able to do, but they're not. The vote had, that was taken, 20 years ago now, the exclusive use of Merrimack residents and their authorized guests, but they have to accompany the guest. All these things, all of your
I agree,
suggestions are
Jackie.
wonderful, but they're not allowed.
I agree.
I
And
would
we could-
disagree, but
We could possibly go back, I think it would require town meeting and a warrant article to allow anything like you're suggesting. I would be in favor of that,
I would be against it.
okay? But
But
that
I
it's-
understand what you're saying.
Yeah, right.
I think I think this is a very common sense board. When we went with town residents only for the beach, it was to be a soft, not pro-enforcing. I think it cut down on a lot of stuff. The proof in the rearview mirror for 5 years, 6 years, is that the beach is primarily
There
residents.
was a lot
and
of
not-
problems
There
until
was.
we did
And
do
there was a lot
some-
until we did it. And then
Correct.
once that
Until-
sign was up and a little bit of enforcement, I
Little
have
bit
don't
of
re-
enforcement,
Yeah, a
yeah.
little bit of enforcement.
Right.
I'm not looking
It
for
didn't have
hard.
to come
I'm
down
not looking
hard.
for some hard enforcing going on down there. I think it's worked. And
There had to be,
and
now,
if we look
there was a sign there, and it did not make a difference
Mhm.
until there was a little enforcement.
right.
Right.
But if you look back over the last several years, I think it has changed.
The last year, maybe. 2 years ago, it was a problem. Go ahead.
I just, in my experiences, having been gone down there as a police officer, and I think Dan is right. I think really the enforcement is, like in my experience, I went down there last summer. There was a car parked down by the beach. There was prohibited smoking going on. There was some alcohol there. That allowed me to approach and identify these individuals to gain, that authorized me probable cause to ask them for
Discussion.
identification. They were from out of town. They weren't swimming, so I couldn't, but they were asked to clean up, and they did, and they were fine, but You make a good point. They do give us reasons, and I think that over the years, good common sense has been used. You got to be careful. But, you know, I'll just leave it at that. I'm going.
That emphasizes when there's a problem, someone was called, an officer gets there, he makes the judgment, and that's
Yeah.
all. And that's all I'm
I agree.
asking of our police department.
Yeah, I agree.
Is enforcing this law, and I think that's what they've always done. They use some common sense. But every situation can be different.
Yeah, I agree.
And you know, Dan, I agree with you, and I recall going down there, just based on the fact that people don't look like they're from Merrimack. And that's a very dangerous precedent, and our officers stayed the heck away from that.
That's right.
Yep.
You go down, they observe, if they see a violation, they'll address those people violating
Usually
rules.
it's the loud noises and stuff like that, that's the
So
problem.
that's just,
Yep.
That's when Okay, so what is,
Madam Chair, move chapter 142 to a second reading and public hearing.
as written?
Absolutely.
Second, with any comments?
Okay, let's do that, hold on. So Bill Boyd, second by Dan Dwyer, but let's comment, you want to do, go right ahead.
I'm done for comments. If anybody else wanted, I didn't want the conversation to feel like it was
Right.
over. But.
Yep, Tom.
I'm hesitant to vote for this, given that Jackie has said that the wording in here is in violation of rules. And I really want to understand that if I can,
Where?
to Wasserman Park Beach. You said that there was some vote taken that no non-Merrimack resident.
Oh, I meant, Tom, that the wording is correct. Going along with the vote taken some years ago.
The wording here that's in here is correct?
I think so.
Oh. Okay. I thought you were saying all of the suggestions or interpretations we were making were in violation of the
Yes.
wording that's here.
Yes, because you were making suggestions that didn't
You did
sound-
not like.
Yeah,
That my Uncle Joe could use my pass. And
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
Yes.
He can, because he's an authorized guest.
But he's
has to be there
only
with the
when it
resident.
comes.
No, it doesn't say that. It
Yes,
says, or have the parking pass affixed to their car.
Oh, that is a good point.
Okay.
I knew the point he was making.
All right. He's
I
an
don't think
authorized
it's meant
guest.
to
so-
be that way, Melanie.
If a
Well,
resident, as a resident, I give my pass to Uncle Joe,
Yeah.
I have authorized Uncle Joe to use my pass.
And that's what I understood when the discussion
yeah,
was
I
to
think there's-
initially
And I
implement
think
this.
everybody here wants their Uncle Joe to
People
go
wanted
to
to
the
soften
It's
it.
not
Right?
worth it, yeah.
Not in my house. I don't
It's
want it. So
stretching it,
yeah,
but
the
I'm
beach
not
is a much
getting
better
heartburn
place.
over it.
I don't have an Uncle Joe,
Yeah.
but. Yep. Okay, I'm good.
We okay with it? Okay, any other discussion?
I'm okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, it's approved, 700. Chapter 193, Welfare Guidelines, poor Pat had to wait to the very end. No, he isn't.
Oh, poor thing.
And there are no changes.
Did you flip coins back there or something and you lost?
No change.
Well, I think she did some changes. There were some
Couple years
changes you
ago.
did not too long ago.
Somebody's mom.
Tom Mayor.
Yeah, you did it wasn't
Yeah, we
that
did a
long.
massive overhaul of the guidelines, like about, what was it, 2012, 2013,
Okay,
2014.
So that's why there's no
so-
changes that you have.
Correct, and there haven't been any laws or anything that's
Regulations or
required
anything.
us to make any changes. And most of our allowances have an automatic update. And I have to do that usually once a year, so on things like that, it's something that we don't have to bring every year to the council to make those changes.
So thank you
Excellent.
very much for coming. Thank you very much for spending the time here. We appreciate it, especially that clarification that you just gave us.
Yeah. Any questions? Motion?
Madam Chair, move chapter 193 to a second reading and a public hearing.
Second by Peter Albert. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? None. 700. Thank you, Pat. Okay, let's move down to Town of Merrimack, number 4. Town of Merrimack tax bill insert submitted by Finance Director Paul McCauley. Town Council to consider enclosing a breakdown of the 217 tax rate and the next tax bill mailing. And we do have an example of the last one that we did. And obviously the format would be the same, but the numbers would change based upon whatever data. So Paul, do you want to add anything else?
No, basically that's it. What's the pleasure of the council? Do they want to include this into the tax bills for residents to see how their tax rate is broken out and where the money goes?
I like it.
I think it's a must.
It's a must.
Yes.
Yes, Pete?
What was the objection to that from the school?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did they object?
Yeah.
No, the school didn't really.
The school did not.
There was a counselor or two that objected of some of the language and how it
Correct.
was written.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
I was part of it.
We
I mean,
corrected
I may have
that.
been the only one, I don't even
No.
know, but I advocated some changes from the original.
And that's what we changed.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah,
Pete?
this is-
I'd say that I would obviously agree with this. It's a great visual to have. People need to understand it, but I'd say we should put it on our website, someplace visible as well.
That's a really good point.
Yep, absolutely.
That's a very good point, Pete.
It gets put on there when, with the, actually, this whole thing gets put on there when we do the press release for the tax rate.
I
And it's
just-
broken down like this.
That's someplace
it
nice,
just-
easily findable, yeah.
To me, it's like if you see it,
Findable.
you know, if this comes up, if it's put in with a document and it's page 4 of the document, people aren't gonna get to it, but if they see this right there when they, you know, they look at it under the news section, you know, I think people, it's very, you know, people don't realize it sometimes, and I get asked that all the time, so.
Yeah.
No, we will definitely, we can take over an
Think
area
about
on
where-
there
Yeah.
above PFOA.
Yeah. Okay, so do you need a motion or just consensus?
Madam Chair, I move that the town council authorize Finance Director Paul T. McCallie and anybody else, probably Diane, the town clerk, to enclose a breakdown of the 2017 tax rate in the next tax bill mailing.
Motion made by Bill Boyd, second by Peter Albert. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? None, 700. Okay, approval of the minutes from the following town council meeting, September 28th.
Madam Chair, I move that the town council approve the Thursday, September 28th, 2017 town council meeting minutes as presented.
Second?
Bill Boyd made the motion, second by Peter Albert. Any discussion, corrections? There is a correction.
Me. I was not in attendance on the 28th.
Ah,
Oh, I missed that. Wow, I'm
so,
slacking.
Assistant Town Manager
I am
Paul
slacking.
McCallie was not present.
I am slacking. Thank you, Paul.
Yes, Tom Koenig?
On page 8 of 13 on line 24, it talks about a motion made by Councilor Boyd and seconded by Councilor to table the discussion. And I think we decided earlier that you don't need a second for a motion to table, and there's no name of who that counselor is. So either we just remove the "and seconded by Councilor," or figure out who that person was if we did get a
Somebody,
second.
well, there wasn't a motion to table because that motion to table had failed. So then this was we had the fund balance to the general fund, and then and that's right. You are correct. I tabled it to October 12th, so it should be taken out. I agree with you.
So just remove the "and seconded by Councilor."
Yep.
Motion made to table is all it needs to say.
Okay.
Let me just check real quick. I
Yeah.
don't think so, but I didn't have anything else.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion made by Bill Boyd, seconded by Peter Albert. Assistant Town Manager, Finance Director Paul McCallie has been removed, and the removal of what Tom Koenig had mentioned. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? You and I, because we were absent.
True.
I'm taking care of you, Jackie, don't worry. So it's 502, Harrington and Flood. Yeah, they had a really short meeting without us, that's all I know.
I was gonna point that out. Did you, the meeting was so quick, and the only difference was. there were two
The
fewer
leadership,
people.
exactly. Okay, comments from the press. Seeing none, that takes care of that. Comments from the public, the same. Comments from the council. Mr. Dwyer.
Nobody else?
Well,
No,
you're going
I
to be
had-
first.
Oh, go, please.
He wants to be last.
He wants to be last. Okay.
Just a update from the planning board. You heard in the town manager's report that there's a meeting coming up next Tuesday to talk about, or to review and discuss with the applicant, potential applicant, the big housing project off Executive Park Drive. So just to make you aware that that's happening. But the other thing I wanted to point out is that the MyBox company, regional corporate headquarters or something like that, has been approved on DW Highway next to Fallon's Furniture. I think it's Fallon's Furniture.
Down
And between them and Heron Drive or whatever that street is that goes down there. They're going to build actually a fairly large structure there, probably 2 or 3 stories high, where they're going to be able to stack all of their MyBoxes inside for storage in a controlled environment. It's going to look a little bit, in my opinion, industrial, but it's going to also represent the MyBox look, if you will. So it'll be white metal and things like that. The people are doing their best to make it look as nice as they can in the neighborhood, but it's a big use of land that's been unutilized for a long time. And so that's an encouraging coming forward. The thing that you might be interested in, though, is that they are currently building and working on one of those commercial buildings off Continental Boulevard. And they're using that now temporarily, and they're planning to actually move in some years totally into this new regional warehouse. And they're also using it as kind of a staging or a view spot for other people around the country that want to build similar situations. So they're expecting to bring in people that are wanting to get involved with MyBox in other parts of the country to show them what kind of a facility they might want to put together and stuff. So it just is another instance of putting Merrimack on the map, if you will, from a commercial perspective.
Nice.
So otherwise, there was pretty much simple kinds of planning board types of things as far as approvals of housings and stuff like that. But that was the major one coming up, and the ones coming up. And of course, you see the redevelopment of the Shaw's Plaza
Yes.
going on, and we're excited about that happening.
You said it never looked better. In the state that it's in right now.
I'll stand by those
Peter?
words. Looks better now than it did. You all set, Tom?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. I just want to say, I'm on the board of directors for Meals on Wheels, and when I saw what the library is doing with this program, I think that's awesome, and I hope it takes off in other communities in Hillsborough County. Because we have our elderly population that some of these folks don't see anybody other than the folks that come and deliver their meals. So I think that's awesome, and my hat's off to the folks at the library, and I hope other people follow. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I guess it's your time.
This is kind of funny because I wasn't planning on doing this a few months back, but unfortunately, a lot of you have already told and told management as well, is that I regret to inform the council I'm going to be resigning effective October 26th, be my last meeting here. 27th. My wife and I are going to be retiring and moving out of state. So at this point, I don't know when that day is going to be, but because of the calendar, I wanted to make sure that the next new person would get up a little bit before the budget season started, and I wanted to give the council a little bit more time. So you probably still see me around town, but ultimately my plan was to be moving out of state. So
In warmer climates.
warmer climates. So I've thoroughly enjoyed my time here, and I think the people of Merrimack, my kids are still here, so I won't be like totally away for very long, but I just really enjoyed the company that I had here on the council, and the people who gave me the chance to come here and get elected 3 times. I thank you all very much, and I'll see you all around.
Can we deny the resignation?
Sure.
See what that gets you.
Yeah, right.
In light of that, since I was one of the people that he told me about, I am going to introduce a schedule. I did look at the previous resignation was Jody, when we had to have her replaced as well. So based upon the timeline and the policy in the charter related to filling positions, now remember the effective date would be October 27th. And we have 21 days to be able to fill that position. So letters of, and we'll make sure that this is on the website, and we'll make sure we repeat it during the next meeting, which you will be at. The letters of interest should be sent to town manager by Monday, November 6th. Interview dates will be November 8th and 9th, depending upon the number interested. And the selection will be at the town council meeting on Thursday, November 16th. And that's within the 21 days.
What day was the last one?
November 16th is when the town council meeting. Now that position would be from November 16th, because at that night they'd be sworn in, until the April election. And then the April election, there will be an election for that 1-year term that's left. Okay?
What was the
There's
deadline
1 year
was?
left in the term. So the letter of interest letter needs to be received by Monday, November 6th. Interview dates will be November 8th and 9th, depending upon the number that we receive. And the selection will be at the town council meeting on Thursday, November 16th, which actually works out pretty well because it's before the budget really starts. Right. Okay, unless we can get him to change his mind, or his house doesn't, we can buy his house. No, I won't.
I already pulled every card I could. It didn't work.
Well, part of me is jealous, so.
See, a lot of me.
I know. Well, we'll have our words of wisdom for the next meeting, but. We'll miss you. You know that. There's certain things that don't have to be said.
Yeah.
You know it.
Yeah, but there's some that have to be said.
Okay, I'm all set.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned by Bill Boyd, second by Dan Dwyer. You should make most of the motions during your last meeting.
That's right, so I won't be there for the minutes to prove it.
You won't be there. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. 700. Good night, everyone.